My biggest thing was Coda wanted me to go through highest first, um, like around our area, and he's like, go by that, look at people's rates and prices and stuff like that, and go by the highest because we have to calculate for the worst case scenario. But different people had completely different rates, and even companies, and it was all across the board. And so it was kind of confusing. And then I went on specific websites that talked about, and I was looking at our area, I was looking at the Richmond, Virginia area. And I was also looking at specific websites that talked about that job in the state, how much someone earned on average, what was the highest you could get, and try to find a medium balance, since it is a short film, and since it would still be indie, it wouldn't still be like totally professional, but it would still be, independent, but it had to be like higher budget. And so it was hard, because some of them I was like, really, that's a lot. And then others I was like, are you that's it for certain salaries? And yeah, and we tried to find a middle ground in a lot of them, and it drove me crazy, honestly.
Yeah, what you really want to do in making a budget is, well, especially if you're actually like going to plan to make the thing that you're budgeting for, instead of just using it as an exercise, but you want to reach out to people around your area, see how much they charge, and then pick somewhere like that's more realistic. If 5 people say this amount and one person says 3 times that amount, then you probably want to go with one of the 5 or the higher end of those 5, rather than going with the one who's ridiculously charging.
But I also had the, like, since I was used to looking at it from a like smaller budget perspective, I kept being like, oh, well, we don't need that, or, oh, well, we can work right around that. And then could I remind me, honey, we're looking at high scale if we're asking for funding, or if we're looking at the worst case scenario for how much we would need. And I was like, well, we don't really need that, or it doesn't really need to be that much, or we would probably be able to find cheaper, but I had to look at it from the more expensive so that later on I can break it down into a cheaper, kind of like a first draft situation.
Yeah, you always want to start with the more expensive. We'll get into that in a minute. First thing I'm going to start off with today is talking about how long are film scenes. This is just real short. Scenes are typically between 1 to 3 minutes on average in a movie. An average script will contain between 40 to 60 scenes if it's a feature-length film. So 90 to 120 pages or more will contain around 40 to 60 scenes within it. You usually don't want to spend too much time in a scene. You don't want to be longer than 4 to 7 pages, which would equate to around 4 to 7 minutes, typically speaking, because it starts to get a little more boring and you're taking up a lot of your screen time for that film. If you spend 9 minutes or more, that's 1/10 of your entire movie in that one scene. So depending on what you're trying to do, though, you might want to, you can be in there longer. It's just that the general thing to say is not longer than 4 to 7 minutes, but typically speaking, the average length is 1 to 3 minutes. So scenes are actually really quick. If you want to check it out, watch a movie, turn the time on where you can see the time displayed while you're watching and see how long a scene actually takes to get by, because most will follow within that range. You'll see that, oh, this scene is actually really quick, and it's a lot quicker than you would think if you're just thinking about it, generally speaking. If you stay in a scene for longer than 4 to 7 minutes, you just want to make sure that there's a reason for it. Maybe you're setting up a lot of stuff or there's a big sequence happening, or there's a lot of suspense and stuff going on that you need to expand that long to make it work. Well, then that makes sense, but just make sure you're not staying in a scene longer than it needs to be just to be there. You want to have stuff be pretty much to the point, especially with the way audiences are now. The scenes are getting a lot quicker than they used to be. If you go back 20 years and watch a movie compared to watching a movie now, you'll see that the scenes and the shots and all that change up a lot more than they used to. And then some scenes are even like less than a minute. So it really just depends on what is happening in the scene and how long you need to be in the scene to get that message or that point across for whatever that scene is for to advance the story. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but just typically speaking, 1 to 3 minutes for the most of your scenes, 4 to 7 minutes for the longer ones. And you usually don't want to go over that unless you have a reason to. Does anyone have any questions or things to add to that?
Did you guys go over the exercises yet?
Not yet.
Oh, you're doing it at the end. Okay.
Yeah.
As far as everything you said about the I mean, I preach this a lot, you know, and the thing is, like when people do when I read people's script and I see it's like 5 pages and I try to do, and it's a hard thing. Like a lot of people are so prideful and they just don't want to listen to you.
Mhm.
And you know, I tell people like, man, you got like 5, 6 pages here. Want to cut some, oh, but you need this here, you need that. And I understand it's very hard to accommodate for that scenario, and it's very hard to shorten things. Like I guess, like, you know, they say like short films are more difficult, not because you would think that they would be easier because they're shorter, but in actuality they're harder than traditional feature films, because you still have to tell the story and follow the, you know, beginning, middle, and the end, but you have less time to do it. That's what makes it so difficult. So people have a lot of hard time condensing their scene to only 2 minutes, but that's the challenge, and that shows true talent of a writer if you're able to do that, you know. And like you had mentioned, like some of the older films, like The Godfather, you know, just the older films, you'll see longer films, but I really have no idea how those films work that way and how they were able to keep you interested. I know I bring Quentin Tarantino up a lot, but there's a theory behind him. Like he's doing something to make you stay interested in his films. But films like The Godfather and, you know, those older films, like I really don't know how those work, but yeah. 2 minutes is
some people say it doesn't work for them because they don't like the pacing of mob films and stuff like that. So it really depends on the person, but I don't know. I do think that a lot of it, in my opinion, is just good dialogue. When you have dialogue that's engaging and the time, and you calculate it in a timing where it's still dynamic enough and you can still make the shots interesting, and you have a good actor that, you know, knows how to make that interesting. Like there are some actors who just their face, like that, I don't know the name of the actor, but there's an actor from Battlestar Galactica that me and Coda love. He plays Admiral Adama, and his face sometimes will say entire sentences, and that is engaging.
Yeah, that's a part of
episode.
acting.
Yeah.
But there are movies like let's say a Blade Runner, like the original Blade Runner versus the one we watched, the newer one. And it's just like I've said it before, well, to me they're both boring. To me they are both,
Yeah,
like,
I would agree.
equally boring.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit.
But you have to argue, like, all of those scenes are like super long, you know, and you have to go back and watch the original and then watch the new one.
And some feel long and some don't.
It's a lot of walking.
The ones that do.
Yeah. So it's not just the older films. The newer films are doing it too. Like I fell asleep during the movie Dune. Like I straight up fell asleep. I was like, oh my God. I woke up, I was like, it's still going. Oh my God. But yeah, I don't know. I think for me, like if you aren't that, you have to be honest with yourself and think like, is this good content? You know, and it's a hard thing to be honest with yourself, but like, does this scene need to be, you know, 10 minutes or 5, or, you know, even more, you know, does it need to be that long?
Right. And I think another part of it is like, is it over explaining too much stuff that's going to be seen? And also, like, are you coming into the scene? We were talking about this at one point, I don't remember what for, but coming into the scene on time and leaving on time instead of coming in too early and leaving too late to where it's boring, like watching the people walk up to the door and knock instead of just cutting right to them knocking. It might save that time and make it a little more quick. And you usually when you jump into a scene, it's like kind of in the middle of something happening for the most
Well,
part.
there's that too. That's the editing side. You got to think about it. Like if I have these 6 or 7 pages of script, I'm killing my editor because I've done this before where I would edit a project and I'm like, oh my God, this scene is still going because I run out of shots to cut to, because it's for me, like as an editor, I'm like, I have this thing about recycling shots once I've already used them. Like I'll do the over the shoulder, over the shoulder, over the shoulder, over the shoulder. And then I need to cut to something else. Like I need to go to a 2-shot or a wide shot or something. I need to get out of this because it's just going on too long. And
Right.
then I cut back. I'm like, yo, I'm out of shots. I've already used this close up. I've already used the over the shoulder, So like, I mean, that's kind of like a good kind of rule to kind of follow. Like, all right, so this dialogue goes in and I'm doing these close ups. And then this dialogue is going in the over the shoulder. This dialogue is going there. And then if you run out of shots, then you can probably say, well, maybe I need to cut the script down because like it's just too long. You're killing your editor at some point,
Mhm.
but then like you said, Coda, like there's an editing aspect of, do we have to show him physically opening the door or can we just hear it and then, assume that the door is open and closed,
Right.
Versus that saves time. But that's just like small detail compared to like having actual 6 and 7 pages worth of dialogue and nothing. And there's no amount of, I mean, the only way to fix that and to like, let's say you do have a scene or, you have 7 pages worth of script, a way of fixing that would be into blocking. So now you have to divide your scene up without actually dividing your scene up. So you have 2 characters talking at a table midway through where it starts to get a little boring. Then you can say, okay, well, one character gets up, he walks over to the window, he's saying this and that. That kind of breaks it up a little bit and turns it into a completely different scene almost. And
Right.
such a
Because then the
way.
framing and composition are all different.
Yeah, that's one fix for it. But you just gotta think like, is all this dialogue, just like you said, like, am I actually pushing forward with the story? Is this actually necessary? But yeah.
Yeah, so you always want to be careful with that, especially if you're writing scripts, just to like try to keep things between that 1 to 3 pages, or if you need a longer scene, maybe 4 to 7 pages, but try not to go over that because it starts to get a little too much. And if you can find a way to say the same thing through visuals and through quicker, like more to the point dialogue that still works for the scene, then it's usually going to be better for your script anyway. So that's always something you want to consider, everyone. All right, moving on from that, we're going to talk a little bit about walkie talkies. So walkie talkies for on set, you're normally going to want that surveillance headset, the one I have in this picture right here, to attach to it. They're just a little more inconspicuous and they go into people's ears. They're a lot more comfortable. You can wear them all day and they're not really as annoying as some of the other ones you might have, and they won't be bulky and in the way, and they still have your other ear exposed so you can hear what's going on outside of the walkie-talkie itself. So you want to do that, get those if you're going to have people, your PAs and whoever else is going to have walkie-talkies on set. You want those for them. Some walkie-talkies have a vibrate function that you can basically do it to everybody's walkie-talkie, so that if someone's not answering, it'll vibrate and they'll know, oh shoot, I forgot to put my earpiece back in because maybe they took it out for whatever reason. They were going to the bathroom, they were eating, whatever. So some of them have that function. You might want to look for that if you're ever looking for walkie-talkies, because that's a good thing to have to get somebody's attention if they're not answering back. The number of channels that you can turn the walkie-talkie to is something you might want to consider, especially if you plan to work in cities or areas with a lot more people, because the more channels you have, the more chance you have to turn it to a channel that doesn't have any interference or isn't being used by someone else around that area. So less channels means you're more likely to run into those issues. More channels means you have a little bit more of a chance to get to a channel that's not being used or isn't going to have any interference from other factors and other things. On the higher end of walkie-talkies, they usually require a license or a permit to use. So be sure to check the ones you're wanting to get and make sure the area that you're going to be using them in, whatever their rules and laws are with two-way radios, you check that out to make sure that it's not illegal to use them there, especially the ones that you're going to get, because certain ones are more powerful than others. And if you're near a military base or something like that, they don't want you picking up any of their communications and comms or interfering with their stuff, airports, things like that, things that need that constant clear communication. They don't want anything you are doing to interfere with that. So you got to make sure whatever area you're in and whatever kind of walkie-talkie you're using is legal and able to be used there, or get the required license to use it, because some of them will let you basically block a channel just for you in that area, whatever zone you're in. It'll allow you to do that, but you have to get a license for it and buy or purchase that channel pretty much to say, okay, only my crew can use channel 2. Everyone else can use whatever else, but we can only use this one. So that's something you're able to do, but you have to get a license for it. And licenses vary on price depending on what you're using them for. If it's a business one, it's going to be more expensive, of course, than just something you might use with your family. So be sure to check that out, because I think it was like 4 different kinds. One for businesses, one for families, and then 2 others that I'm not really sure what they're for, but basically just different scenarios. So the walkie-talkies up to around 5 watts, they're normally the ones that don't require a license. So anything below 5 watts is usually going to be okay. That's how powerful they are. Anything more powerful than that, you usually will require a license wherever you are. So just keep that in mind. You can specifically look up walkie-talkies that don't require a license to find some of the better options. But I would still check out the area you're planning to shoot it in to make sure that it's still okay, because you never know, especially depending on what kind of city you're in or how close you are to those airports or government areas and bases and stuff like that. You want to make sure that the one you get is tough, durable, and has a resistance to impact. A lot of people step on these, they drop them, they leave them somewhere and someone sits on them or sets something on them. So you want to make sure they're durable and can handle all that, because with walkie-talkies, people don't really pay as much attention as they do with some of the other gear. So even though these can be very expensive, people just don't handle them properly, or they just leave them, or they accidentally drop them on the ground when they're trying to clip them to their belt. Things happen. So the more durable and the more it can resist all that is the best. So you want to make sure it's tough. You typically want ones that are weather resistant, so it can be able to handle the cold, hot, or wet. That way, whatever weather conditions you're having, you can have these walkie-talkies, they'll be fine and they're not going to malfunction or mess up on set. Long battery life. A lot of the ones, the higher end ones especially, can last for a full day when fully charged. So just make sure if you're going on the super low end, you just see how long those batteries last, because you don't want to have to stop in the middle of set to charge them. If you can, you want to make sure they last all day for production. And then the range that you get, the range that they can communicate to. So how far away the 2 radios are from each other, or the 20 radios, or however many you have. The range will tell you how far away you can be and still pick up a clear signal from them. Typically, you don't really have to worry about this as much when you're talking about film sets. Most of them are going to reach the range needed to talk to everybody on set. Most people aren't going to be miles and miles away on a set. So you don't really have to worry too much about it. But if you are going on the super cheap end, the ones that are more made of like plastic and stuff, you're just trying to get something for communication and nothing too expensive, then definitely keep an eye and check out what the range is for that, because you don't want to have it be 30 feet and then somebody goes that way from 30 feet and all of a sudden it loses signal, that's not really going to work for what you want. So you want to make sure that it has enough range for whatever you're doing. Other than that, the brands that you'll find for walkie talkies, the main ones used for filmmaking are Motorola and Midland. So those are two of the brands to check out. They're very well known for being used on film sets. They have different ones, different capabilities. Again, they have some that are for specifically for people who don't want to have to get a license. And then they have some that are for the more professional film sets and studios that want to buy their own channels to make sure that nobody else is going to be communicating on their specific frequencies. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or things to add on the walkie talkies?
No. I know that you need them for most things.
Yeah, they're very, very good.
Yeah, anything for any on-set work that you're doing, you want to have a headset. If you're not on set, then you have the radio, and that's fine. But like, yeah, that's what I know from that.
All right, moving on from that, we're going to talk about editing with speed a little bit. You can see in this picture, that's called speed ramping, when they go from being fast to slow motion to fast again. When slowing down any speed of clips, you usually want your footage that was shot to be at a higher frame rate than what you're editing in. So if you're editing it in a 24 frames per second timeline, then you want your footage to actually be shot at 60, 120, 240 frames per second, something that's a lot higher so that you can slow down those moments and it'll be very clear and it won't be blurry and jerky and ugly if you do too little of it. There are things in editing softwares like frame blending, or where your computer can detect and generate frames in between the frames that you already have. So it kind of like tries to fill in the blanks of what could be there if you're trying to expand it. But you know, those don't always work the best, and the best results you're always going to get just from shooting a higher frame rate and slowing it down later in your timeline. There are also options to speed up the footage, which will make it appear in fast motion. You can do freeze framing by exporting a frame and then choosing a duration for it to display. It could be a 1 second, it could be 20 seconds, it just depends on how long you want that one frame to be shown. And then speed ramping, which is the combination of having normal speed, slow speed, and fast speeds ramp up and ramp down at different times in the same clip, like you see in this GIF up at top right on the screen. You can make it go quicker to slower to normal speed, or any combination of doing anything with speed when you're doing speed ramping like this. There's also the option to have footage play in reverse. So you can have everything go backwards. Sometimes you'll see in movies, they have like some huge mess on the ground and there's a huge, like, it looks like a tornado went through the room. And then they show in reverse what happened and why it looks that way. So they'll play the scene in reverse to show you how it happened, what happened, somebody hit into somebody, which caused this to cause that, to cause this, to cause everything to fall over and make a huge mess. So there's that option to play scenes in reverse. And also you can play them back at normal speed in reverse, slow speed in reverse, fast, or do speed ramps just in reverse. Just depends on what you're trying to do and why. Most editing softwares have a rate stretch tool. So let me see if I can find it. So on this little GIF, you can see the rate stretch. You click on that, that's on Premiere Pro, but pretty much all of them have a similar tool that can stretch the rate of the clip. You just click on one side or the other and it'll extend it, making it longer, or you can shorten it, making it faster. Again, you want to make sure that your clips have, you usually want to make sure that your clips have higher frame rate when you're stretching them out and making them longer. That way they slow down and they still look smooth and nice and they don't look jerky and ugly like you would if you brought in a slower frame rate. Also, there's the ability for most of the editing softwares, you'll have the ability to right click on the clip, go to speed and duration, and you'll get a little box sort of like this. This is on Premiere again. All this stuff's on Premiere, but it's universal pretty much between the larger editing softwares. And then you can actually choose the percentage that you want to speed it up, or choose reverse speed. So that way, if you don't want to just select it and drag it on the timeline like below, you can actually choose a speed to speed it up or slow it down too. So if you want to slow it down to 80%, you can make sure it gets to exactly 80% instead of having to check it out and watch while you're doing it when moving it in the rate stretch tool.
Makes sense.
And another option, which I'm sure all of them have, is you can go down to show clip keyframes, time remapping, and click speed, like in this box, and it'll open that little blue box where the line is 100%. Moving it up means it's going to be faster. Moving it down means it's going to be slower. So if you want to see more of a visual on it going, like if you want to see it like that instead, you can view it like that to slow it down or speed it up. All of them are going to do the same thing. They're going to speed it up or slow it down depending on what you're doing. And so it's just different ways of doing the same thing. You can also use the pen tool to create different keyframes on this line, making it faster and slower in the same clip, which can give you those speed ramps, and making really slight adjustments to make it really smooth or really jerky, going from fast to slow and back to fast or normal again. When you're editing in a timeline, you're going to have a sequence and it's going to be 1 frame rate. But you can edit with multiple frame rates in that timeline. It's just going to basically convert it to the frame rate you're editing in, or it's going to extend it out. So if you're using a 30 frame rate timeline and you bring a 60 frames per second clip into it, and you want it to play at the same speed, it's going to be double the length because it's going to be 60 frames. You can still make it look like it's playing back at real time. It's just going to take longer to get it to play at that speed. You can bring 60 frames per second, 120, 30 frames into a 24 frames per second timeline, but you're going to have to adjust the speed of the clips for them to play smoothly and make it look like it's real time. Because at 30 frames per second, if you bring it to 80% speed, then you will have it play what looks like in real time, the same way you would if you had a 24 frames per second clip. That's because if you do 30 frames times 80%, you'll get 24. So it makes it seem like 24 frames per second. There's also this thing called interpret footage, which is just doing that exact same thing. It is taking whatever footage you have, whatever frame rate it's at, and reducing its speed or speeding it up to match the timeline to make it play back at around the same speed. Basically, just whatever timeline you are working in, you want to make sure that the frame rate is divisible by it. So if it's 120 frames, you can divide, and you're working in a 30 frames per second timeline, then you can divide 120 frames by 4 to get 30 frames. Or if you bring in a 60 frames clip, you can divide it by 2 to get 30 frames. You can do the same thing with 24 frames. It'd be you would divide 120 by 5 to get 24. And you could slow down the speed of the 60 frames clip to 80 or 40% to get it to be divisible by 24, pretty much. It's a lot of math. It sounds a lot more difficult than it is. Once you get used to it, it just makes sense once you start bringing in those different clips. But you can't really do the opposite. You can't really bring in 24 frames per second or lower into a higher frame rate timeline without it looking jerky and ugly. We saw this a few weeks ago when we were talking about speed, and we put it in a clip and showed how it kind of jerks around and it doesn't play back smoothly. That's because it doesn't have the frames it needs to show it. So it's just kind of guessing what those frames might look like, or pausing and having nothing play. So then it just looks like there's nothing there and it's kind of jerky. So all it's doing is showing one frame for longer, and then it's showing the next frame for longer as well. And it just keeps doing that for the clip because it doesn't have the information it needs to show each frame individually like you would if you shot at a higher frame rate. Last thing you want to do when you're talking about speed is making sure that your audio is recorded at the same frame rate that you're going to be editing in. So you can change it on most recorders. You can change the frame rate that you're recording your audio in. It can be 24 frames or 30 frames or something like that, but you just want to make sure you are doing that for whatever footage you're doing, whatever you're going to end up editing it in. That way it matches. Otherwise, you're going to have problems with sequencing, and it's going to be a bigger hassle than it needs to be. And it might not even ever truly sync up. So you want to make sure to record in whatever you're planning to edit in, the frame rate. And then lastly, shots with panning or a lot of motion are more susceptible to having problems when you interpret the footage because there's a lot more stuff going on. And when you're interpreting footage, especially if you're trying to add frames in, the editing software is trying to create a frame that's not really there. It's trying to guess, okay, this girl's here, and then in the next frame, she's turning her head a little bit. I'm going to add a frame somewhere in the middle. And it sometimes can work, but usually it doesn't. And so anything that has the camera moving a lot, or that has people in the frame moving a lot, it is going to be harder for you to match up different frame rates, whether you're slowing down the speed or you're speeding it up. It's going to be a little bit harder to do than if it's less movement. Next thing we're talking about speed is motion blur. You can see on the left, when it spins around, you can see a little bit more motion blur. You can't really see as much detail as you can on the right. And it looks a little more realistic because of that. One reason that you want to shoot at a high frame rate for slow motion is so that there's a lot of smooth playback at lower frame rates, so you can see all the details. The other reason is so that there's less of that motion blur. It's because with a higher frame rate, you're going to have the shutter speed at a higher as well, so that it stays at that 180-degree shutter angle, which means that the shutter will be open less and it'll be taking more pictures basically, which means it will have more information there and less blur in between the shots, the frames, I mean. There's gonna be a lot less motion blur than you'd get from shooting at a lower frame rate with a lower shutter speed. So it's great for seeing things clearly when they're slowed down. This thing on the GIF that we're looking at right now, when it's spinning around at a speed that's a lot faster than what you would typically see without seeing that motion blur, which is why they wanted to add that motion blur in on the left. But if it was super slowed down and we were barely moving around it, we would want to use the one on the right so that we could see all the details. We wouldn't want to see blur in that instance. When we see motion in real life or turn our head very quickly, there's going to be blur there because we're not able to register as much of the detail as we do when we look at a still object without moving our head. So if you just look at your hand and you don't move your hand at all, you can see a lot of the details, the creases in your hand, how dry or how oily it is, all of that stuff. But if you're starting to move your hand around, you can see it starts getting blurry. And if you're moving your head while moving your hand, you can't really even register that it's there as much. So because of this, we're used to having that motion blur in real life. And the faster the motion is, or the more motion that's going on with both the camera or our head and the subject or the hand in that instance, if both are moving, we have a lot more motion blur, we register a lot less detail, and we don't see it as clearly. If we're just moving our head, we can make it out, but it's still not that good. If we're just moving our hand, the same thing. And if we're not moving either, That's when we can finally pick up all that detail and see everything very clearly. So when we're seeing things in super slow motion, that's like taking your hand and just barely moving it. Instead of waving at somebody, you're barely moving your hand. You can still see all of the creases. You can still see all of the dry or oiliness in your hand as you're moving it, because you're moving it so slowly that your brain is still able to register all of the detail, your eyes and your brain. So whenever we're seeing it on film, typically what we want to see is all the details that we would see in real life if something was moving that slow, which is why most films will shoot at a higher frame rate. So there's more clarity during those slow moments. But the opposite is true when we want something sped up. We typically want to see more motion blur, especially with quick camera movements or movement within the frame. So in post-production, there's also the option to add different kinds and amounts of motion blur, especially with moving graphics or something that was created in a computer like animation. If you left it like it was on the picture up here on the top right, it just doesn't look as realistic as we see it on the left whenever it moves around and we see all that. We don't see all of that. That's the whole point. We don't see as much in the background as we do in the right. And that's what we want to make it feel more realistic. That's why CGI, animation, anything that's created in the computer, graphics, titles, anything that's moving around and created in the computer, you typically want to add motion blur to so it feels more realistic and it doesn't stand out as something that's weird, different, or created in the computer and it doesn't look fake. You'll have to test out the different kinds to find your favorites because there's quite a few in different editing softwares, and different softwares are able to do it better or worse. There's some that are specifically for it. So do your research on that if you want to test it out. But typically with the editing softwares, you get the top 4, Avid, Adobe, DaVinci, Final Cut. You'll have quite a few options, and you'll have options to get plugins that can add some kind of motion blur to your frames and your shots to make it look more realistic. So you'll have to test them out and figure out which one you like the best and how much you like and all that. Just remember, if you're speeding movement up or camera moves, you typically want to add more motion blur. If you don't, it's going to be clearer than the audience is expecting, and it's even off-putting to a lot of people. Also, it just takes them out of the movie, makes it feel like it was, it just doesn't feel as real or as engaging as it does whenever you add in that realism and that stuff that we see in real life when things happen that way. So just be aware of all of that and make your choices with that stuff in mind whenever you're doing anything with changing the speed or speeding it up. Anyone have any questions, comments, things to add?
Not on this right now. I mean, animation's all like, it's pretty cool how everything kind of comes together. Has anyone here ever done any animation? Brian, Lania, Vish? No?
No, I know a few.
Yeah.
I know, I think Arden.
Arden did a few in class, and
I have.
I know people who've done like a
I
few
did.
works here and there.
Yeah, I did
Right.
some animation back like in high school. I took like an animation class. It was quite fun actually. It's not the same level as obviously like film, TV stuff, but it was pretty fun.
But one of the
Took a lot of
things about
content.
like this is it's not just animation as well. It's also for like if you are shooting at a higher frame rate, for this speed ramping thing. Like
Yeah.
you have to shoot it at a higher frame rate, but at some parts you're going to add some motion blurs so that when the quick movements happen, it looks blurrier than when we're slowing
Yeah.
down and seeing it all clearly.
No, it's
So-
fun.
So yeah, motion blur is added to things where the frame rate was higher, or you're trying to speed up a camera movement. Maybe you're trying to punch in really quickly to something. You just add some motion blur so it looks a little more realistic instead of it looking too clear, pretty much.
Hmm. I like that scene, like the fight scene there. That's good. That's a nice breakfall there.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
You think another
It's
couple of
unique
nice
and different,
breakfalls?
or at least it used to be.
Used to
Now
be
it's
what?
overused, I think. I said it's unique and different, and I said, well, at least it used to be. Now it's kind of overused in a lot of things, especially Zack Snyder does it with all his films now. So
Oh, does he?
most. All right. So moving on from that, we're going to talk about. Well, actually, we're going to move into our exercises. So, does anyone want to start off, or I'm going to start with the sound tool exercise? We
I
already
have
have stuff
them.
pulled up.
How are we presenting them? Are we doing screen share or whatever?
Yeah, you can do a screen share. I'll stop mine real quick.
Okay, you guys can go first. I'm just gonna go pee real quick.
You're gonna miss that.
All right, so V said she'll go first. Sound tool exercise. This one was just using different sound tools to make the audio sound different with each take, doing the same take over and over again and adjusting it with one or two tools to hear what it sounds like and do changes.
I like my water. 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 I like my water.
What are you saying?
I like my water. Can you not hear?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I could tell like the first one, you added echo, and I think it was the third one. Let me see.
I like my water. I like my water. I like my water.
Echo or slowing down the speed or the pitch.
I like my water. I like my water. I like my water. I like my water.
That's distortion. You know the order you did it in?
It sounded like something off of a horror film. She says, not really.
Gotcha. Yeah, reverb, compression, EQ, delay or echo, whichever one. Higher pitch, lower pitch. Higher pitch at the end, lower pitch whenever it sounds like a demon.
Hey guys, can you play it again? I missed it.
Yeah.
I like my water. 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 I like my water.
That's pretty cool. Which program did you use? Audio Mass.
Audio
Cool.
Mass. Never heard
There's
of that.
so many cool programs. Anyway.
Cool. So Sarah, did you say you had one?
An audio one? Yes, I do. Let me just, how do you, let me to share my screen.
You
here.
share screen. Oh, hey V, did it help you like learn what each does at all?
Oh, there it is at the bottom.
Getting you ready for Logic? Logic X Pro?
Yeah, and just, music. Go to the desktop one. Okay, you just have to see me pull it up. 1 second. All the weird stuff I'm reading up on. Okay, here we go. The other one. And
Are you there?
oh, whoops, that's just the. That's not the exercise. That's the. I think of movies. Is that it? Come on. No. Okay. I should have got you guys to I'll stop sharing. You guys do another one first, and I'll pull it up. I'll resend it.
All right.
Sorry, I feel so stupid. It wasn't opening.
No, it's fine.
I'll
go
share
ahead
in a
and
second.
do-
I'm just saving it to another file here.
Oh, no worries. Sometimes it's a little annoying.
I should have checked it, and I checked it on the program. I didn't open it after the anyway.
So we used Audacity for ours. I definitely noticed, like, comparing that to watching the sound editing tools when we went over it, seeing the more professional ones where it has like a lot more options to see what you're doing compared to, Audacity is really cool. You can do a lot and it's free, which is why I used it. But you don't really see what you're doing. You can't really see what it does to the waveform in real time. You have to like make the adjustment and then see and then go back. And so it takes a bit longer to kind of get to the same point, and it's harder you can't really play back a clip while you are editing it, which definitely speeds up the process where you can hear it change while you're moving the different adjustments up and down. So that's something.
And also Coda chose to use a clip where my voice sounds like I'm depressed and want to kill somebody. So
Well, that's fun. I love.
Hey,
so this
It's
first
not
one is
fun in real life, but I would be like cool. Like if we're talking about audio sound, that would be like a cool horror effect. That's what I meant. I didn't mean that.
no, I
yeah.
just mean like I sound all depressed, like and I, you'll see.
Yeah.
But,
You have to use that one.
But yeah, I can definitely see the benefits of having a more professional, well, a not free one, basically, one that actually is made for this, and it costs money, because editing it while you are listening to it and hearing it while you're adjusting it is a huge benefit, because then it's way less trial and error, and it's a lot more precise with you choosing where you want to stop it at. And just seeing where the frequencies are at, like with a professional thing, you can see the frequency map, the heat map, which shows where the frequencies are hitting. So if there's an annoying sss or anything like that, a hiss or a low rumble, you can see exactly what frequency it's hitting at and why, and adjust it down. But with the free one, you can do a lot. You just don't really see as much while you're doing it, so it's a bit harder.
Yeah,
Anyway.
that's good. It's good to see like all the different programs. Like there's so much you can do.
Oh yeah, there's so much you can do with audio whenever you get one of those other ones. And another thing with Audacity that I noticed is that some of the tools are named differently than they actually are. Like one was amplify, which just meant which was the same as what was it called? Amplify was used as, I think it was normalized, something like that. But like the one that was actually normalized wasn't actually what you would think of if you're talking about it. So like I had to look up a few things to see the differences. But if you're using Audacity, just learn the Audacity tools, because the names might be a little bit different than in other tools, and it might not be the exact same. You might get a different result because of it. This first one is just normal, so no editing done. Hi everybody, I'm Lakota Cloud.
And I'm Priscilla Cloud.
And then this one's using a low pass, cutting off.
Also, Coda's voice is closer to the mic than mine, so that's why there's more of an echo on my voice naturally.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's see.
Next one's a low pass that's cutting off 100 hertz and below. Hi everybody, I'm Lakota Cloud.
And I'm Priscilla Cloud.
And then we got a high pass.
Hi everybody, I'm Lakota Cloud.
Wait a minute. Oh, that's replaying that one. Then we have a high pass.
Hi everybody, I'm Lakota Cloud.
So you can tell like the differences in the high pass and the low pass. Low pass, it sounds more like it's behind a wall. High pass, it sounds more like it's robotic or alien.
Hi everybody, I'm Lakota Cloud.
And I'm Priscilla Cloud.
High pass means all the higher frequencies are going through, while it's blocking the lower frequencies below 1,000 hertz. And the low pass, it's letting the lower frequencies through while blocking anything that's 1,000 hertz or over. Next, we have the band pass, which is cutting off anything below 190 hertz, and it's cutting off stuff above 1,000 hertz.
Nice. Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm looking at class.
It's a lot more muffled. It's a lot less
Yeah.
frequency. It's a lot less full sounding.
When you get good at this stuff, it's easy.
What?
So when you get good at the program and you know what you're doing, just go click, click, click. They'll fix.
Yeah.
Oh, sounds great. Well, it's like if you record it right, then you put it into the audio and you're just like touch it. I'll add a little reverb there. Make it
This
nice.
next one is using a compressor, negative 20 decibel threshold. So anything that goes above negative 20 decibels, it's going to start lowering it, lowering the volume of it. I just did that so that it was noticeable since it wasn't really that loud of a sound. But it's a 7-to-1 ratio, which means anytime it's getting a decibel over negative 20.
I was gonna say, honey, can you turn it maybe up a little bit, because I don't know if anyone else, if it's for anyone else, but for me the audio is a little quiet. It could just be mine.
Well, if I turn mine up, will it affect you guys?
Oh, I don't know.
I think my output will just be my output, not yours.
Oh, never mind then.
Anyway, this compressor at negative 20 decibels. So anything that goes over negative 20 decibels is going to, it's at a 7-to-1 ratio, which means for every 7 decibels that go over negative 20, only one gets through. Basically, it quiets everything down a lot more above negative 20 decibels. It has an attack of 1 second and a release of 8 seconds. Attack means if the loudness goes over negative 20 decibels for more than a second, then it starts the compressor and it doesn't release it until 8 seconds later. So basically it's on the entire time for this clip since everything was pretty much over negative 20. So it just makes it a lot quieter. This is the best use whenever you have a very loud noise and you're trying to cut off the loudest of it. So you make a compressor for it. When you're using something that's at a normal sound level, it just makes it quieter pretty much.
Yep.
Next one is reverb. Reverb makes
So
it sound like it's
quiet
in
for
a
me.
bigger. What?
It's so quiet for me. I can barely hear it.
Turn up
It-
your phone.
It does sound like the audio is coming into your mic and not through the screen share.
Is it not coming through the screen?
That's what
Let
I'm
me-
thinking, because it
stop it.
sounds really echoey and weird. Like barely, so quiet, like it's from far away.
Is that better?
No, I think it's worse.
That's it.
It's worse. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
it's just as quiet. I can barely hear it.
Well, let me see. Maybe if I do adjust my sound, it'll affect it. Oh, no, it doesn't look like it because, well, let me see.
Well, maybe try another one. Maybe it was just that one that
Let's try
was
that. Let me see. Is
abnormally quiet.
Look at a class.
that better?
That one was louder. Yeah.
Let's hear it again.
Okay, interesting. So my loudness volume actually affects what you guys can hear.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah, I thought as much because I
Yeah, but go
remember
back
you
to
did it at
then.
up to everyone else. I've heard it before. It was just
Oof,
because
now
it was
you're
really
really
quiet.
loud.
Sorry. I've heard it before, so it's up to everyone. If they heard it fine, that's fine. I just assume.
I'll go back. Low pass.
Hi, everybody. I'm looking at a class.
Sounds more muffled, like we're behind a door or a wall. High pass. Only the higher frequencies.
Hi, everybody. I'm looking at a class.
Very echoey, or like we're coming in through a radio station or something.
Hi, everybody. I'm looking at a class.
It's a band pass going from 190 hertz to 1,000 hertz. So everything else is getting cut down. The compressor, which is just making it sound a lot quieter.
Hi, everybody. I'm looking at a class.
Well, now it's a lot louder though. Anyway, reverb, which is making it sound like it's a bigger room. You can make it sound a lot smaller or larger, but reverb is basically just used to make it sound like how big the space is that the audio is coming through.
Hi, everybody. I'm looking at a class.
Almost like we're on stage talking through a mic and there's speakers and people are hearing it off in the distance. There's delay or echo. We use delay.
Hi, everybody. Look at a cloud.
And obviously you can change it to just do once where it echoes once. You can make it echo and echo and echo and echo and echo. You can change it a bunch whenever you're using delay. I did, I think 5. So it echoes 5 times before going all the way quiet, and it gets quieter with each time. You can also change how loud it is with each echo to keep it the same level or make it less. Higher pitch.
Hi, everybody. I'm looking at a cloud, and I'm just on a cloud.
Obviously that's a more,
Chipmunk.
what?
I sound like a mouse.
The chipmunk sound.
Yeah, obviously that's a more exaggerated version of higher pitch. Sometimes you might just want to go a tiny bit up to make your voice a little bit higher sounding instead of a very high, like a chipmunk.
Calm down.
Lower pitch.
Hi, everybody. I'm looking at a cloud.
And I'm Priscilla.
Again, more of an
It's just me if I
exaggerated
sound
version.
lower than you.
Hi, everybody. I'm looking at a cloud.
And I'm Priscilla.
No, but you definitely sound weird.
It sounds like my voice is lower than yours.
Back to normal
Hi,
again.
everybody. I'm looking at a cloud.
And I'm Priscilla Cloud.
And then I just did a few different things. Again, this is kind of hard to figure out what to do. I think I did it a bit too much, so it sounds a little weird, but I amplified it, I did noise reduction, and I adjusted the pitch a little bit.
Hi, everybody. I'm looking at a cloud.
And I'm Priscilla Cloud.
There's a little bit more noise going on than I'd like, but that was that.
Awesome. That
Definitely
sounds
learned a
great.
lot from like what the different tools finally, what they do, what they sound like, and what they mean, and what they're actually doing. With learning about all the frequencies and stuff like we did, it makes a lot more sense now than it used to when I tried to edit sound. So I had no
Oh,
idea.
really?
Yeah, because I had no
Oh,
idea
yeah.
what anything was doing. Like, what does low pass mean? What does high pass? All that stuff just didn't make any sense to me because I didn't really know what it was.
Oh, that makes sense. It takes a while, like for anything. Like for me, like the audio stuff, it's like I know it, but I don't know it because I've been a musician for a very long time, like vocals. So I'm like always around doing stuff. I'm not always the one doing all the buttons, but like I've seen so much of the stuff, and I digged around quite a bit too in the past on different audio ones. I kind of cheated on this one because I was just like not because I only have my one computer. And I didn't want to overload it by downloading a whole nother program for this one exercise. I just did it on Final Cut.
Gotcha. Do you have the?
Well,
do
you
you have
already
it
have the
open?
program and you can edit sound in it. It doesn't have the same capabilities as like an actual audio program, but I was like, for this exercise, I was like, I could probably get away with like making them sound different.
Yeah, I
like-
actually noticed in Premiere Pro when I was using mine, it has the capability of playing it back while I edit it. So it might have actually been more beneficial for me to use that for, even though it's not made like it has less audio capabilities. I think it might have more than the free version or on par with it of this Audacity anyway. But did you
Yeah,
have anything open, Sarah?
Yeah, so yeah, I'll show you. 1 second. Let me share. Screen
You
share.
can stop sharing.
Yeah, screen share. Desktop share. Yeah. No, 1 second. You play that.
Are you there? Are you there? Are you there? Are you there?
They almost sound the same, but
Are you there? Are you there?
so they'll almost sound the same. But with the clips, they're a little short. But I actually added quite a few different sound effects to them. If I actually elongated the clip, well, if I had like a longer clip, you probably would have heard it.
I could
better.
tell.
Okay, you could. Yeah, it's very, very subtle, but each one is different. Like they're not just at different levels, but I actually added like different enhancements to them. On this particular program, it's a lot less pronounced to say like Audacity or something. And then I also like curved.
Are you there? Are you there?
So like you can add like curves, like fades in, fades out on
Are
each.
you there?
And then you can make it sound more musical. You can actually go in. I know on certain programs, like if you went on to like certain programs you can actually go in, and I could actually change each note, note for
Oh
note.
yeah, like in Pro Tools or
Yeah, Pro Tools or what was it? Logic Pro. That's the one I used. I used to do like Logic Pro all the time. Not all the time. Like I did it for like 2 years. 2 years of Logic Pro. Yeah, it was pretty fun. All that stuff is really great, and yeah, you can do like a whole lot. Again, for this exercise, it was like kind of not being lazy, but I was just like, I don't want to overload my computer because
no, I understand.
yeah, for this one, if we were doing like a longer like a 20-minute project or something, I would have like gone up to the trouble. But for like 3 words, I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna cheat it with the program I have.
Yeah.
Oh, but since I have it open, did you want to see my ADR project, or should I wait? I'll wait. You know.
You mean the editing style,
Yeah.
the narration thing?
Yep.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'll wait.
No, you can go ahead.
I'll wait till you guys are done. Like we're done all these. Does anyone else have any more?
Well, does anyone else have a sound tool exercise?
I have.
I do.
Oh, you
Yeah,
do?
go
All
ahead.
right, cool.
I'll let Vish go.
Yeah.
Brian, you can go.
Listen, I'm not sure. I'm on my phone, so I'm not sure if I can share my. I'm gonna try. Let's see.
You can do it.
What?
I believe in you.
So if you need time, I can go.
Start recording, casting. Have access to info on your screenplay. Will it have access to my audio?
Go Brian, go Brian.
What does it want? What does it want? I have it uploaded on YouTube, so I might have to just put it in there and let one of you guys play it, but we'll see.
Okay. You want me to go, Brian?
Sure. Can you guys see anything or what? What's the deal?
No. Did you share
No,
your screen?
I pushed the button and it came up with all these apps, so I'm not necessarily sure what it's asking for. Permission allowed, app show things. All right, cool. And where's the OK button? Here on top. Show system apps. I don't know. Can you guys see anything now?
Nope.
Still no. Show whiteboard, document, photos, Google Drive. Screen share.
Which program did you use?
Oh, I just edited a couple scenes. I didn't I use Vegas. It's the same thing Sarah did.
Oh,
If
cool.
it's gonna work. I don't need too music. What I need.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, is it working?
Yep.
Can you guys see this?
Yep.
Can you guys hear it? You can hear me.
You can hear it.
Oh, sweet. You can.
Is this like a really low pitch?
So this is what I'm calling this layering. So what I've done was I've taken a piece of line of dialogue. I duplicated it and put it on the track below it.
Mhm.
And then I slightly moved it over to the left or to the right to kind of give it an effect that it was like a twin effect. You know, when twins say things at the same time, it kind of gives that effect, like a reverb effect, but I'm kind of like creating the reverb myself.
Oh, okay. Cool.
But there's also things you can do. There's also there's reverb filters. There's a whole bunch of filters in Vegas you can put on there. It does the exact same thing, but I'm pretty much just creating the effect. So with that clip you just saw, in this, if you let me go back. In that clip you just saw, what I did was I pretty much, if you'll let me rewind back on YouTube, what I did was I took audio from another take where, you know, and kind of try to match it up, put it on the bottom, and then it gave that effect. But some of these, what I've done was I did a pitch shift where let me just play this one.
It reminds me of whale sounds and aliens.
Is it supposed to sound like it's underwater? Like, I mean, is that
No,
what you did? Or is it like not coming through? I just want to make sure it's coming through the way you have.
Is it just me or does it sound different? Like I can hear a little some parts have more echo than others. Some parts are a little more muffled, or is that just me?
That's the internet. That's not you. The
Oh,
actual
okay.
laughing.
Because it all sounds kind of like it's underwater.
That's the internet.
Yeah, that's why my first guess was whales.
You want to share the link and let me see if I can show it and it might come through better?
I can share the link. Hold on. Let me see. Let's see. Share. Copy link. Stop sharing and
Let me turn up my volume again a little bit.
I guess it's interesting that when you slow down your speed of the net, you can, it modulates the sound quite a bit.
Yeah.
Makes it look like as if
it's everybody's tone. Like it sounded like that on mine when I was listening to your guys' stuff. So it's the internet.
Yeah, it's almost like that Quiet Place we saw movie.
Yeah.
There were some sounds in there which was like interesting. How you
Let me see.
Bitch, don't be sneaking up on people like that. What's wrong with you?
You're the Dark Lord?
I am.
Pleasure to make your acquaintance.
You're welcome. Well, let's get on with it. You say you need this spell because your dad wouldn't get you a pony?
All right.
So can everyone hear it now or no?
Yes.
Cool. So what was that? What did you say the first scene you did?
Oh, so that first scene, I'm using audio from another take, and I'm putting that audio underneath the current audio that's on there. I've shifted it over just a little bit to kind of give it like a creepy reverb almost. Just a little bit. It's kind of hard to do, but this one here, I'm doing this one on this particular one, and then the one after this one. I've done the same thing, but I duplicated it 3 different times, and I slowed one down really slow, and I slowed one down not so much as slow. So there's like 3 different voices laughing at the same time.
Okay, cool.
And it gives off this weird effect.
All right, I should be happy. I'm gonna get out of here. Let you get back to work. Thanks for the tea. Feels like it helped.
Oh, it did.
I'll see you around.
Is that right, Bert? That's not funny, Bird.
No, that wasn't terrifying at all.
You said, wait, you said this one has like the same effect, kind of?
Yeah, this one has the same effect. So it's kind of like 3 different duplicates of the same layer. A couple of them are slowed down at different pitches and stuff. And then there's the regular one at the normal pitch that gives the same effect.
Okay, cool.
The laughter like made me slap my trigger.
No. Thank you, man. But like I said, I didn't mean to offend you or not. That wasn't my intention. I'm just trying to help you out.
Nice.
What's a good time?
And then this one?
This one is just straight up. It's a reverb filter. So this first one you've seen is without the effect, and then there's a one after it with the effect on there. It's just a reverb, kind of like giving like a, I don't know what the effect. I think it's like inside of a metal room effect. Because when you put, there's so many different reverb filters you put on there, and for different ones, there's some that make it sound like you're in a living room, some that make it sound like you're in a metal tank, some that make it sound like you're in an aquarium. So like I just put the normal echoed one on there.
Gotcha, cool.
As the sun sets.
Alright, I'll see you then.
You must be indoctrinated into the traditions of Wakion. Do you know of Eli Monroe?
Look, I'm not down with no new religion, so what's a good time?
As the sun sets.
Alright, I'll see you then.
You must be indoctrinated into the traditions of Wakion. Do you know of Eli Monroe?
Look, I'm not down with no new religion, so
vacuumed.
Yeah, nice. That
lady does
it
not
sounded way more
understand
like they're in
personal
like a, I don't know, like a docking container or whatever you call those things. Docking crate.
It really didn't make any sense. I just needed something to
demonstrate.
Whether it made sense or not, it definitely creeped me out. So
yeah,
it was effective.
The other two scenes kind of made more sense where I would put the effect on it. This one in particular didn't really make any sense. But what I did find was pretty cool is when I did do that effect, I used a straight edited clip. I didn't use the clip out of the timeline. So what I thought was pretty cool is that filter I put on there, it didn't touch the music. It only affected the voices, which I thought was pretty cool.
Oh yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, like there was no effect done on the music, or maybe it was because the music was already echoey anyway, and I guess it was just like, no, I'm just gonna leave it alone. But no,
And I imagine that would be pretty annoying editing too, when you have to make sure that the music isn't affected by whatever you do to the voices.
Exactly, because if
And
you
that's
already
another
have
reason why you want them on separate tracks.
Yeah.
So this
right,
one,
so what's in this one?
This one is just a pitch shift. So what you were talking about earlier about speeding things up and stuff like that and slowing things down, this actually, because I put a pitch on there and I slowed down the lady's voice at the end, but it's a filter I put on there that does that for you, but I don't know why, because like you can just simply just slow it down and then the pitch would still be the same. But I put that filter on there and her voice goes way out of sync. Like it's just so but it's why. So like if you were to use that filter, then you would have to think about like how slow is the pitch being slow, because the video wasn't being affected at all, which
well, isn't there a difference between the pitch and the speed?
What do you mean?
Like if you just affect the pitch, I know you can do it without affecting the speed of the audio. But if you affect the speed, it's going to affect both the pitch and the I guess you can also, there's some that allow you to affect the speed without affecting the pitch. I know there's like a
Vegas.
combination of ones you can do.
Yeah, Vegas has it so when you slow down video, you tell it not to affect the pitch, or you tell it, you tell it to hold the pitch or something like that, and it doesn't get, because when you slow it down, it gets kind of echoey. So like
it gets more like that.
Yeah, so you can have it. So, but this one is a direct filter directly to the audio. So the video, it's not being affected at all. So I slowed down the pitch of her voice, but the video is still going at normal speed. So as a result, I mean, I could have tried to play around with it to try to slow her down too, but I was like, that's not even necessary.
Okay, cool. So it's just going to be out of sync, but it's going to show with the lowering of pitch.
And Ricky,
yeah,
don't think for 1 second you are going to sit up here burning up my electricity on the internet in a fantasy world. You need a job yesterday.
I got you on sale. I mean, look at what I'm doing right now. Don't it look like I'm looking for a job? You know, I got that work. Yeah, you know I got that work. On my baby mama's leave.
I promised my sister I would do my best. Just honor your mother's memory, Ricky, and make something of your life before it's too late.
I promised my sister I would do my best. Just honor your mother's memory, Ricky, and make something of your life before it's too late.
Yeah, way out of
Fine,
sync.
Trevor.
This here, this is the other exercise. It's just a short clip of what did you guys want?
Narration.
And it wasn't narration. I thought it was like you wanted kind of like an L cut into another scene. I didn't do a narration one. I could have, but I didn't.
I mean, I think an L cut would work. It was just supposed to be more set up like the editing style of Shawshank Redemption, which used a lot of the narration to transition between scenes or end or begin scenes.
Well, this is just an L cut into another scene. I have another sample of that, but that's like towards the end. Something similar, but it's not opening a scene. It's kind of it's in the middle of the scene. No, or is it ending the scene? But yeah, that's it. That's all I had to show.
Interesting. I think.
That was awesome.
Right.
It was like really awesome.
Yeah, I really
Let's do
like
it.
the.
Now see,
layering-
that's where
layering
you
part.
fucked up.
What was that?
I really like the layering part. I was listening to some vocal artists or singers, I think, and they were mentioning that sometimes when they want to do the reverb, they would do like, in front of the mic, and then they would go a little bit far off from the mic. So they're controlling the pitch and the delay going in.
Yeah.
And then they would put it on different tracks, and then they would shift the track from the first track to the next track, and they would create a kind of a reverb in there.
Yeah,
it seems
so
like Brian.
Yeah, so I guess that's a way to like kind of control the way you want to do it, or how loud, or how it definitely changes the sound of it.
Right, because the inbuilt filters would come with some default values, unless you kind of change the knobs and stuff like that.
That's cool. Vish, did you want to show your sound tool exercise?
Sure. Okay. Let me share mine. So just say share, right? Share screen. Can you see mine? Can you see the screen?
Yep.
Okay, I'm just going to play through. Take one, recording with no effects. In 2022, thus far, only 2 movies grossed highest worldwide. They were Watergate Bridge and Too Cool to Kill. They made 480 million and 270 million each. Both were from China. Audio recording with sound effects. Delay 1. In 2022, thus far, only 2 movies grossed highest worldwide. They were Watergate Bridge and Too Cool to Kill. They both made 480 million and 270 million each.
both were from China.
So the delay, I think
Sounds like we're in a giant studio. I mean, a giant stadium. Delay.
Right. So the delay is like uncontrollable. So you can control that, but I kind of played it with whatever was there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
So when you're on
delay too.
Go ahead, Brian.
I was gonna say like oh, you just brought up delay. I was gonna say it's the delay. It's like when I'm on base, when I'm on Andrews Air Force Base, and they make announcements on the radio, because like you'll have speakers that there'll be a speaker right next to you, and then like a speaker like 5 miles down the flight line on the other side, and it takes time for the audio to make it to each speaker. So there's like a delay. So you'll hear like a speaker next to you, it'll be like, "This is a test," and then you'll hear it like 2 miles down, "This is a test." That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
No, it's good. No, that sounded cool. Like there's so much you could do with like knowing how to do all this like audio stuff. I mean, it's good. You have to like, you can't just know how to do it. You also have to know how to do it like efficiently, not taking like no time, but not taking 2 years either. Like, reasonable. It's good. No, those both sounded really like I don't know. They're both very different projects, but both of them are very, very awesome. Well done, guys.
Cool. I think Vish, you saw some more.
In 2020, thus far.
So I have other effects. Want to play through?
Yeah, which one's this one?
It'll actually, let me see. This is kind of have the delay two.
In 2020, thus far, 22 movies placed highest worldwide. What a French and Too Cool to Kill. They both made 80 million and 270 million each. Both are from China. Audio recording with sound effects. Delay 3. Delay 3. In 2020, thus far, highest worldwide.
Like a dream sequence.
Like that.
It's cool to see like what the different uses are.
Yeah, just a delay number out there.
Right.
Just like you increase the delay and then you get different effects to it. So you can use it, special the audio effects in your as per the scene that requires it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting. It just kind of gives you ideas as to what you can do with
Yeah.
for different scenes. Yeah.
No, it's cool too. Like, cause when you have the footage, like you can play around and you can make a scene completely something else. Like, there's so much you can do. It's so awesome. Like
The horror to the dream sequence, or to in a big hall or big forest. So you can have different effects of that. Okay.
Right, or just like a memory of like thinking about something that happened earlier.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I dig it.
All right, you can keep going.
I'll play through.
Yep.
Audio recording with sound effects. Delay plus reverb. Thus highest worldwide. Water rich to therefore only 80 million to 70 million each. Both were in China. Audio recording with sound effects. Echo. In 2022, thus far, only 2 movies closed highest worldwide. They made 480 million and 270 million each. Both were from China.
So
almost like that.
With delay and echo, isn't it basically the same thing if you this is just for me to understand, I'm not like saying anything, but can't you do basically the same exact effect with delay as echo or vice versa, depending on the adjustments, or is there actually a difference in them?
Right. So I think the echo, specifically speaking, literally speaking, is something you're in a big palace or something, and you're shouting. The sound is kind of hitting the walls and coming back to you, right? Or
Mhm.
and delay is it's probably like more like a artificial stuff, like dream sequence would have imaginative kind of sound, which you're manipulating the sound, something like that. That's what I think. That's what I feel like it's happening here with echo and the delay.
Mhm.
Delay is everything I said about the military base, and the base is pretty much a big airport. So it's just kind of like if you ever watch the news and they do reporting, like they're reporting the Ukraine stuff, like, and you'll have a reporter in Ukraine and a reporter in DC, and the reporter would say, what's it like over there? And the other guy doesn't respond for like a good whole 5 seconds, because it takes time for that message to get all the way, because all the way in another country. So it takes time for it to actually get there, even though it's live streaming. It still takes time for the message to get through. That is the delay, and it's the same thing with audio as well. When you broadcast something over the radio, like if you've ever like, you guys don't have cable, but like let's say I have DirecTV, so I'll be watching something in my living room, and I have the same channel on in my bedroom, and there's like a millimeter of a delay. Like somebody will say something, and then I'll hear it in my room. The same thing in my room. It's just because it's the broadcast features, there's a delay.
Yeah.
So when you think about delay, just think of it as more of the media that you are broadcasting is taking time to reach a different device. So when somebody would speak on my base, on an Air Force base, somebody would say something into the loudspeaker, and it will broadcast from the microphone to all the speakers, but at different times. So like when you're on this, you'll hear like an announcement, like, "Oh man, this is a test." I'll hear it on the speaker I'm nearest to. I'll hear it, and then literally like 2 seconds later, I'll hear the same thing on a different speaker 2 miles down the road.
Honestly, that sounds like it would be hard to actually pay attention to what is being said, because they're like, wait,
It
what?
is.
Because you're one over the other.
It is, and then on top of it, because it's loud, so you have echo and then you have delay at the same time. So the speaker that you're closest to, you can hear that speaker, and then you can also hear the echo that's coming from it, because sound from the speaker is traveling around and stuff like that. But then there's the delay from the other speaker that's 2 miles down, and that has its own echo. So it's like a combination between delay and echo. Echo is more of a direct source. Like you said, a direct source that's like bouncing off the walls and coming back at you. A delay is what it is, a delay in sound. So
Physical sound, physical delay. I think your example of like you may have the cable going into your living room, and then you may have a TV, the same cable going into your bedroom, right? And you would hear that the delay, physical delay in the signal. One may be longer than the other, so you see that physical delay. That example is kind of pretty good.
yeah. So a delay, I guess the best way to, it's kind of hard to describe it in a way, but I guess it's going to be, an echo would be more close up, more, in your area, as opposed to delay, which would be, it's going to be distance. Because going by the example I just gave you, there's got to be some kind of distance between.
I guess what I was wondering is, like, could I make it sound like an echo from using delay, or would I have to use echo?
To give you to give you an example of how that would go, to create an echo, you would have to replicate the same source, like I was saying, like I was telling you with my example, how I duplicated the sound and just did little tinkers here and there. To create an echo, you would have to duplicate it like 3 or 4 different times, and then space each of them out like by a millisecond. A delay would be further spaced because it's more out there. So like a delay, I would be able to say like the word delay. If I say the word delay, an echo would be delay, and before I can even finish the word delay, you could kind of start hearing the word again over and over and over. But at the actual delay, I would say delay, and then you'll hear it in the next room. So it'll be delay, 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 delay.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So I guess it really has to do with more and less as with the spacing in which the sound is being put out there. I guess.
Like where the
so
sound's coming from, basically.
Yeah, so that you could probably replicate it, but it would be hard. I'm not gonna say it'd be hard. It'd just be a real pain to do it, because versus
just using the tool for it.
Well, yeah, you want it to sound the exact same in the head. That makes sense. Otherwise, like, if you want it to be quite different, then yeah, do it different. But like, if you want it to be the exact same, it makes more sense. And then if you want it to be slightly different, duplicate it and then edit the second one.
And then on top of that, to add to that, a delay, the sound is going to go all the way through. Like the word delay, you're going to hear the word delay again, like the whole word. An echo, at some point, the word is chopped off because you're only hearing like the last bits of it. So it's like echo, and then
it's like oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's echo is more like a reflection, and the reflection kind of drops off.
Yeah.
But delay is more like a multi-source, which is a complete word. I guess that's what makes sense from what you're saying, Brian.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right, Vish, go ahead.
Cool. All right. So I got a few more things. Audio recording with sound effects. Slapback, reverb. Slapback, reverb. In 2022, thus far, only 2 movies grossed highest worldwide. They were Watergate Bridge and Too Cool to Kill. They made 480 million and 270 million each. Both were from China. So the slapback, what I found was that it's a very short reverb. So like if you're standing in between alley, right, of the 2 building, and if you do a clap, it's like, you don't get too much of reflection or echo, but you get like a very short. So that's what I think they say is a slapback reverb.
Okay.
Something different. I just want to see what they are, so kind of know exactly how their sound.
Yeah, like what they do and everything.
What program did you use?
I had used Pro Tools long time ago, so it was like refreshing for me to getting back, and it took a while.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you don't use something, you cannot completely lose it, and then it takes you a while to get back.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Especially with all these complicated tools that have so many functions.
Yeah. It's more so like, inputting and outputting, right? That itself is very confusing.
Yeah.
Okay, so next one. End of sound effects exercise. Finish. All right, that's it.
Oh, okay, cool. Nice. It's
Good
cool
job.
to see like the different variations of what is that? So was it like settings, like pre-settings that were already in Pro Tools, or were you just adjusting it differently when you were doing it?
So the delays, you kind of randomly picked up different delays, based on the knob setting up there. So you just delay 1, delay 2, delay 3. And echo was whatever the default settings were, and the reverb was whatever the default settings were. So if you could adjust, usually they kind of put it in the middle, and then you adjust a little bit on the left side or right side to cut it or to increase it. So that adjustments you can make. I just wanted to see what's in there, so we kind of make a distinction, as to what different effects do to your sound as such.
Right. Cool.
And I believe, reverb is something by default, from what I read, that you need to use for pretty much all dialogues. It makes it a little bit, it gives it a volume.
A little
That's
bit
what,
more like full, right?
yes, yeah. Otherwise, it's a little bit, the frequency response is a little bit flat when you just take it the way it is. And that it may be okay. It might work for the scene that you have, but for some scenes you may require a little bit. So if you're using a lav mic and if you're recording, right, and if you're in a room, it may be okay. But if you're in a big hall, your lav mic is only going to pick up your voice, which is very close to the mic. So in that case, you may want to add some reverb. It could be a room reverb, or it could be a hall reverb, or it could be, a church reverb, whatever
Stadium.
reverb.
Yeah, it just depends on like what the space is. And the more reverb you add, it's just assuming that the space is bigger that the subject is in. So if they're in a stadium, if they're in that, you're getting really clear up close audio with the boom mic and the lav mics. You want to add reverb to make it sound more like it's coming in that area.
Yeah, usually the guy who's doing the mixing, final mix,
Mhm.
he's looking at your scene on a big screen, and then he's kind of pushing those knobs based on the effects that he would feel for that particular scene.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that I think that's happening more in the final mix. You probably don't look at these effects, when you're doing audio editing or just doing your regular editing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because it's more for the sound mixer at the end.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Does anyone else have one, or did we already go over everybody's for the sound tool? All right. Well, would anybody like to do their editing style exercise?
The ADR,
What was that?
like the ADR.
Yeah, the narration.
Yeah. Well, I did more Foley stuff for mine, but there's a little bit of narration.
Okay. You can go ahead if you'd like. Actually, Vish, can you stop screen sharing real quick? There we go. All right, Sarah, would you like to share yours?
Sure. Okay. Well, it's gonna be ridiculous.
Hey, it's me, Jimbo. What are you looking at? Hey, yeah, you. You know what that is, Baba? It sounds like a snack. I sure am hungry. You hungry?
Oh, I know, it's ridiculous.
It's funny though.
That's kind of the point was like just was like sometimes like at home like I just want to like not just get it done but like actually try out some like I wanted to try out some like Foley sounds in mine this time, so like just see what I could like make noises and see how I could put it together more so than just my voice. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Is that a Care Bear?
It's a teddy bear. I don't even know.
Like one of the Care Bears. I was like, which one is that one?
Yeah.
Hey, you better not be bashing Care Bears.
Yeah,
God.
there's a thing going with my like the puppy thing. It's like a thing that it's funny.
I grew up on it. What movie was that? One of those movies kind of was like really, really creepy. It was really, really. The one where it was like the kid was a magician and he was being influenced by this spirit or something. It was really.
Oh, I think I think my mom actually did not let me watch that one because of that.
I'm gonna share
dark.
Yeah, no, I think
no
my
idea
mom
what
probably. I think my mom probably prohibited me from watching that one. Then again, my mom prohibited me from watching Power Rangers after she watched an episode, and the girl was like, "My mother's spirit is in me," and she's like, "There's spirits in this." Bye.
Oh, really?
I was never allowed to watch Power Rangers after that.
Me and mom, we watched Pineapple Express together. It's like characters.
So yeah.
Well, I was older, but like still.
All right, here's V's editing style exercise.
And just like that, I had walked in on them discussing my promotion. Here I am, trying to make sense of what they are saying. Do they even see me standing here? V walks over to the team, thinking to herself. Shoulders back, eye contact, and...
Nice.
That was so cute.
What did you use? You made those little cutouts yourself? Or is it like some kind of app or something?
They look similar to I could be wrong, but they look very similar to what she used for the exercise last semester. I could be wrong on this.
I think it was the cinematography one, yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. A little
That
bit.
is so cute. It's so cute.
Does anyone else have a editing style exercise?
I can
Also-
share something, but
What was that?
I'm not. I could share something. Hold on, let me see if I can find it.
All right, well, while you're looking, I'm going to share ours real quick. So we just grabbed some stock footage and did the voiceover over top of it.
There is a certain calm in nature, a breathtaking beauty and peace you can't find anywhere else. The stillness of a forest, as all you hear is the bristling of the leaves. The beauty of the sunrise through the trees, a beauty all its own. Something you just can't find in a city. Although I suppose it does have its own beauty, especially when I met her.
And then it would basically just lead into whatever scene with the girl in the city.
I suggested we do something a little more funny since when I wrote it, I was thinking of that narrator from SpongeBob, but Coda wanted to go the more emotional route. I think it worked. I'm just saying, it would have been fun to also see this.
No, I was trying to match the style of Shawshank Redemption a bit more, where it was like a little bit slower paced, a little bit slower.
It was just, I know, it was just fun to imagine it in that voice, okay?
The scenes take a while. Oh, and by the way, I got that stock footage from Videvo. I don't need or Videovo.
Coda did the voiceover.
Did you use some sort of effects in there? Sounded pretty voluminous.
Yeah, I did a tiny bit of reverb, like you were saying. It makes it a little more full. I adjusted the pitch down just a tiny bit, and I think that was it. I don't think I did.
We lowered the music too significantly so it wouldn't overpower the.
Oh yeah, I mean, I changed the volume levels, but that's like, you know, just what you do.
Find anywhere else.
Oh, and then I did a noise reduction to take out any room tone.
Oh, okay. That sounded pretty good.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right.
You can definitely, make a career in voiceover.
Oh yeah.
Voice narration.
I told him he has a nice
Rated
voice.
voices. Is this the whole thing, Brian, or just part of it, or what?
It's just part of. There's two versions of it. This one, I think the version is only like a minute, almost 2 minutes or something like that.
Is it the beginning, or should I cut to something?
You can play it from this one, I guess. You can play it from this one.
Okay. Feels very old school.
Reminds me of those old cartoons. Or like movies from the 80s.
Hi. Good afternoon, sister. I'm Mary. Can I interest you in some makeup products? Sure, come on in.
You weren't kidding about the 80s Kill Bill feel.
And that's where my story begins, ladies and gentlemen. Yup, that's Mary of the brand Mary Kay. But there's more to it than just some pyramid scheme. Mary Kay is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And you don't become a billionaire without pissing a lot of people off. It's a very lucrative but dangerous business that requires more than just a pretty face. To get that pink Cadillac, you had to have a particular set of skills. These skills would later earn me the code name, Black Puma.
I gotta tell you, honey, you are very easy on the eyes.
Thank you.
Would you ever consider selling makeup? I really think you have what it takes to sell the brand.
And I think that's it.
Nice.
So
I'm
I didn't
assuming
have.
that's placeholder, or is it supposed to be like the the robot-y?
Well, no.
With
This
Google.
is. This is the Google Voice. I didn't get a chance to do the narration yet. But I edited the scene, and like I mentioned before, like I like to get my actors involved and stuff. So like I put that together to kind of get their opinion and see like the debate was, do they want, how I started off in black and white? Do I keep it in black and white? Do I take out the black and white? So I was just gonna show them that. But I was like, man, I don't have the narration. The narration is what needed. So I went online and I used the Google Voice, and I was like, I can just replace this until we find time to. But that's pretty much what the dialogue is going to be for.
That's actually a good idea for timing too.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. Like this is my first time ever doing this approach, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah, and I do feel
it's
that
a good way to like time it out for the actual narration later.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. I was like, that way you know exactly how long you need it to go for, and
yeah, without having to wait for you
yeah.
to sit down and do the narration part.
Question for you on that, because I actually am curious about like the narration thing. When you were shooting, were you shooting like extra long just in case? Did you have it going through your head how long it might take? How did you guys decide how long the shots would be? Did you just do it all in editing, like you just had extended long shots?
Well, that is a very good question, because we ran into that issue. So we did do different variations. One was longer, one was shorter, just to be on the safe side. And then we did a couple where we tried to like time it out. You just like kind of all right, cool. And then we did a couple versions where we just had somebody read the dialogue over while they were doing their thing.
Gotcha.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I was curious because I have an idea for some narration thing, and I'm wondering how it would go about to get the best, to make sure it times right, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it really all depends on how you're doing it. So like if you're not going to be doing a lot of cutting, then you might want to take it a little bit more seriously. But if you're like, oh man, I got all these, and that can mess you up too. Like if you're like, man, I'm going to be going this way, that way, this way, and this way, I have all these cuts I'm going to do. That can mess you up, because then those cuts might be a little bit too short and you might not have enough. But to fix that, you would just shoot more than what you intended to shoot. But yeah, you would also have to think about what style of editing you're doing. If you're doing a lot of cuts, then that could be, you'd be like, you can relax a little bit more. But if you're not, like I only have like 3 shots in this, 3 or 4 shots to cut from. So it's like I have to time it out. I have to time it just right for every, for every shot. So yeah, that is a very good question.
Cool. Okay. All right. Did anybody else have the editing style exercise?
So I did put something together, but I think it's kind of pretty rough, and there may be some continuity issues and storytelling issues. So please excuse any mistakes I might have there. Okay, having said that, are you able to see?
Yep.
I sometimes wonder why we spend so much money on subscription of various channels for entertainment. Spend money to listen to the music, listen to TV programs, and so on and so forth. When you can get all the entertainment free from nature. This is what dawned on me when I was going for a jog on the trails close by. I could see the beauty around me. I often pass by a lake, which is full of ducklings jumping around, playing with water, chasing each other, while the mother ducks, the parent ducks, just keep watching them. But sometimes when the lake is full, they're not to be seen. I wonder where they go. That'd be very similar to where the future is going. Doing well.
Nice. It's kind of like the same idea. The nature and everything.
Yeah.
Like just the pacing too, with like the outside and stuff. It had some emotional pull there too, like a little bit like, like it reminds me like a little bit of Planet Earth. I love that show.
Yeah, it was cool. It was nice. It was kind of laggy for me, but I think that was just the internet.
Oh, it was lagging. Yeah, I think there was some issue with the sound. When I heard it here on my laptop, it was okay. But now when I hear it through this, it was not. The sound was not good.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and that's a good thing to bring up too. Is like anytime anyone's editing any sound or whatever, always make sure it sounds good on multiple devices. Sometimes it'll sound good on your professional. Well, it'll sound good on your phone maybe, but it won't sound good on a more professional like studio setting. Which is why you'll see whenever there's like the larger budget productions, they always go into a theater room to listen to all of the different.
And also when you export, I think that's sometimes that kind of brings it down also for some reason.
Because it loses some of the information, I think, right? Or compresses it down or whatever. Yeah, cool. Does anybody else have a editing style exercise that they did?
I did my 8, like the other one. I could do an amp, something like that, and present it next time too. It's easy enough. I have done narration over editing before.
Someone have a cat?
Yeah, that's my
Sarah.
Ah, okay. All right, so you guys want to move on to the budgeting exercise then?
Yeah, I think so. I thought, I didn't know you wanted more like footage because I just filmed my little doob myself. I actually, I narrated like when I went to the zoo. Before.
Oh, you want to show that?
Hmm?
Did you want to show that, or do you want to move on to the budget?
Oh, it's like backlogged. Like,
Oh, got you.
yeah, I would have to like find a good one. Like, there's a whole bunch of like cool stuff. I could definitely prepare something like that for next time. I just thought of it now.
Yeah, it's fine. The main thing about that was just to get an idea of like that style of editing is all that was the exercise was mainly for, is just to get a sense of, because of the movie we watched, it was a little bit more slower paced. It had those longer takes with that narration leading or ending a clip or transitioning between them. So it's just to kind of get that sense of that editing style down. In the next movie we watch, we will have probably a faster paced editing with it. So it'll be a different style. All right, so moving on from that, we're going to do the budgeting exercise. Who would like to go ahead and go first?
Budgeting exercise? I can.
Okay.
I just did a quick budget. I'm not sure if it's correct. It's because it's just 3 pages. So I've kind of budgeted like on the low end scale. Obviously, if this was bigger, we would have more people and stuff, but I was just doing like a micro budget. So say like story and rights for 3 pages for like $100, like, which is kind of lowballing the $50 a page a little bit. And then director and staff 200, cast 200. Yeah, there's 2 casts, $100 each. If depending if this was medium budget, I would just kind of double everything. If this was like high budget, I would maybe like 3 or 4 times it. So it wouldn't change like too much. I'm just kind of looking at like the ratios of like where the budget would go. Then you would have to rent out the property. Say you to friends, you give them $100. Wardrobe, you do a rental for the costume. That comes in at about $100. Then camera, you got a good deal for your friend. I don't know. I guess like this would be like micro budget, like what we're doing, student stuff. Like,
Yeah.
or like it's just like a step above.
One thing I want to point
do
out.
understand that like camera can be $600 a day with rental and stuff. So I do understand price points. I just for this exercise, I wasn't sure what price point we were kind of looking at. So I kind of just did like the ratio of like camera, we would have more budget than wardrobe and property, depending on the property. But for this, it's just a kitchen. So I'm estimating something like reasonably. Like
So with this budget, I just want to point out with property, it was actually like the property master. Locations is the location of the shoot. So you would just put the 100 into the location.
To be fair though, that
makes sense?
template can get a little confusing because there are a lot of things there that I'm like, well, would this fall under that? And
yeah,
I had to like go to Coda and be like, hey, can you help break this down for me? Because I was a little confused as well.
Yeah, I think like it would be more fun to budget something like an exercise if we actually had like 100-page script. That would be fun to actually budget. With this again, like I'm picturing like what we did for student stuff is that I was kind of catering it towards that. Again, like if we were doing a sale or like this was like a high-end music, it really like that's the problem. Like it depends for budget.
Well, the whole purpose of the budget was for us to look at the highest case scenario and think about it as if we were pitching a proposal. So like you could have thought of it a little bit higher if you wanted to, but I understand it like for me, I had difficulty as well looking at it from, I was very inclined to be like, oh, we can cut this and oh, this will be cheaper. And I bet and looking at people's rates and everything, I'm like, oh, the medium is this, the average is this. And I had to be reminded like, no, I'm looking at higher rates so that later when I do the second draft, I can see how much realistically I can cut on. But right now I'm looking at higher rates. So yeah, it can be hard when you're used to that.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense there because like for a short film, you're not really going to get any funding pretty much.
Yeah.
But with the exercise was meant to be more of like if this were a feature film, we're going to try to get funding for it. So you show the top sheet to the people you're trying to get funding from and say, this is how much money it's going to cost. And then if they give you less, that's when you start cutting those corners and figuring out what you can do. And well, I do know a friend that has a camera, so there we can we can pay him half the rate, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like one of the things that annoyed me was that ours was so over. I was like, no one would give us funding for this. And everything was so over.
So
Go.
go ahead, Sarah. Sorry for
No, that's
didn't want to
okay. So
interrupt.
again, like I didn't realize, like it depends. Like if we were talking like 3 pages from a $50 million TV show, obviously this is ridiculous. But I was picturing what we were doing in the course. So that's kind of why I went there that way. I could definitely make those adjustments depending on, because like for me, it's like if I look at budget, it's going to be different because you have 3 tiers as well, right? So it's all going to, the rates are going to be different too. So who you're budgeting for,
Yeah.
what's it? If it's 3
Right.
pages from a feature film, it's going to be a lot different budget than 3 pages on a short film. And
Right.
like, is it a music video? Is it Eminem? Or is it a music video with a startup artist? You're going to price point it different. That's just what it is. So I feel like with this, we would have to be like a bit more specific on what the who we're marketing it to be able to get an accurate budget.
Right.
Sure. I think I'd like to add is, if you're doing like a short film, like
Yeah.
3 minutes or 5 minutes,
Yeah.
and this can be applicable to that. And sometimes, like you, as Brian was mentioning, that you allocate percentage, right?
Mhm.
So you're on a small budget, you want to really do basic stuff, right? So on the top page, you can basically say, okay, this has to be 10%, this has to be 50%, this has to be 30%, right? And then you kind of go backwards for, usually I think this spreadsheet, the way it goes is that you go through the different tabs, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I was looking at the budget and you have like 4 or 5 different tabs. And you fill up those tabs and these numbers automatically come onto the top page.
Yeah.
Right?
Code also broke it down to where if you press, I forgot what you press, but like it turns red and it explains every single thing for you. And I only figured that out later.
Oh, you just go to the
Not easy,
tabs,
but
the help
just
tabs
complicated.
that I add.
Yeah.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
What's not going on here?
And mine still came out to 1,300 on like micro budget. This is if we were paying people for like a short instead of just all being students and the volunteer work. So like the next step up.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, like, well, I was looking at the script and it's a 2-actor, 1 location, no effects, nothing extra. I didn't really worry too much about insurance because I'm thinking like, I'm picturing this as like, you're shooting it in your friend's kitchen and you're giving them like money for like bonus, when you're like, here, thanks so much for letting us, come over. Here's
Sure.
like a kind of
Yeah.
Yeah.
$100.
So mostly for short films, there's not much of post production.
Yeah.
So, and that makes perfect sense. Like you basically putting money for the basic fundamental stuff that you can put it together to get a short film.
Yeah.
and,
Now, if this
publish
was
it
like
home.
Marvel, right, I would be looking at this different, and I would actually go in like if I was doing this budget so that I understand the exercise. I would go into the actual like who I'm marketing it to, and actually look at the tier and actually at the rates, and I would budget it
Right.
properly.
I think the key is to get an understanding of those tabs, and
Okay.
how they populate onto the top sheet. Because as Lakota was mentioning, that the top sheet is what you have to give to people,
Okay.
and the rest of the tabs are essentially for you to
So
control.
What do you?
Yeah, the main
so
thing is just to
for-
start thinking about, like, if you haven't ever done a production at all, to start looking at all the different things that might be needed and really figuring out,
Really
what you need, what you don't,
realistically,
how much it might cost,
yeah.
and like looking it up and then
So our
paying
approach
them.
our approach was more along the side of, all right, let's see how much these things realistically cost in our area. What are the actual rates? What because if you actually look, even short films, if you're looking at high end, they will cost you quite a few thousand, which is insane. But so our approach was more like, which was really frustrating for me because I went Sarah's mentality for a lot, and I was like, oh, can we do this? Can't we do that? And I was like, no, because we have to realistically look at how much it would be if we had none of these things and we were asking for money and we were seeing how much all these things cost. So I had to look up prices of locations and had to look up prices of insurance and had to look up realistic rates in our city and in cities near us. And just the idea of how much it was at the end blew my freaking mind, to the point where I think I went the other extreme issue, which was, okay, this is way too much, maybe for like the high end, but we can definitely cut some corners here and I can definitely find a middle ground.
Yeah.
And it's not this much. But because I just kept getting drilled in my head, like, oh, you have to do the highest one you find. I spent the entire weekend freaking out because I was like, but this is too much, but this is too little. And this is because like I mentioned earlier, I actually looked up not only people's rates on different websites and what they charge, but also different companies. And then I looked up projections in our area, everything in our area. And then I looked up projections for that specific job in our area, how much they charge, what's the minimum, what's the average. And some were like way over. And some were like, really, that's it? So it was a cluster F for me. And yeah,
She was freaking
as
out
you
more
guys
than
will
she
see.
needed to, basically.
Well, no, but it was confusing. It was confusing because at one end you were like, really, that's all they charge, that's all they pay a year on average. It could be because it's Richmond. It could be because it's we don't have as much film here, or it may be just because it's a lesser valued profession or whatever. But the extremes were interesting, and I just wanted to make sure I was right, honestly, and I wasn't going too much on one end or the other.
Well, I guess like it depends. Like if you're thinking this is more 3-page on $1 million budget, then yes, that's going to be more accurate.
Well, but that's the thing. We're talking about proposal, right? So I was looking at it. Okay, let me see how much everything costs and how much it would be. How much, and then I can.
But realistically, you wouldn't try to propose. I mean, you can, but you're not really going to get anybody to fund a short film. Really.
I know, honey, but that's what you told me to do. Okay, you told me to go on the extremes.
No, I'm just saying, like, yeah, we're trying to find like realistic rate. You're freaking out over like it being exactly correct, but the main point was just to get like the prices of like how much it can cost, not how much it actually will.
But that's our whole argument the entire weekend. I was like, well, can I look at averages? And you were like, no, go the highest you find or whatever the crap.
I said go on the higher end of the average, because so what you want to do when you're budgeting is you want to get some rates like from people, like how much is this going to cost in my area? Ask a few people, see what their rates are. And again, if 5 people are saying that their rates are $500 a day, but one guy is saying, oh, well, I charge $1,800 a day, then obviously you're not going to go with the $1,800 a day guy because all the rest of them said 500 or less. So it's probably more around that area.
I looked,
but if there's two people, that say I charge $370 a day, one person says I charge $450, and the other 2 say I charge $500 a day, then you want to go on the $500 a day average, the higher end of that, so that you have a worst case scenario budget.
I understand that, and that's what I did. I looked at people's
I'm not
individual
explaining
rates.
it to you, I'm
and
explaining it to everybody else.
No, I know. I'm just explaining why I think I overcorrected. And I think some of these I could realistically find better prices and better averages.
How
and
much?
Yes, I did overthink quite a bit.
How much was the
What?
How much was the total budget that you got?
So the total budget that we came to when we were looking at is $125,000, $871.
Is that for feature, right?
That has to be
Just for the 3 pages, the short film altogether, on like a more expensive budget.
And you think that's a lot? I actually looked it up. Short film features are around 50,000 on the high end. Or so.
No, that's on the low end. On the high end, it's like 1 to 3 million.
Yeah, that's on the low end. Yeah, and then it's like 1 to 3 million. But like we're talking about indie budget. High end indie budgets are around 500 to 1 million for short films. And I was like, what? But yeah,
once you start, that's
me
what
out.
this whole exercise is for, everyone. It's just like to start breaking it down and looking at all the different costs that go into it. So like Vish was saying earlier, these tabs you don't want to mess with on the top sheet whenever you have an Excel program. If you'll see, it says like sum of blah, blah, blah. That means it's going to whoops, I don't want that to happen. All right, it's going to automatically generate from the stuff that you put into it. So we went in, we looked at like what we need, what we don't, looked up like maybe the casting director rate, all that kind of stuff. Lead cast, we said maybe the first one will give 1,000 a day, and the other one we give 500 a day because the first one's a higher, a more experienced actor.
Right. So I think this may be very. So you have like the peak values, right? Sometimes you have no choice but to give those peak values, depending on whom you're getting. Like if you're getting a really good, let's say if you're getting a really good DP, right?
Yeah.
You have no choice but to give him the peak values. But that peak value may not be applicable to like a boom guy. Right? Boom guy may be able to get it cheaper. So it's good to go with the absolute figure. Like if you have 125K, and that's absolute high that you would have to pay, right? But then you would have like a lower budget that you want to, let's say if you are going for funding, you're getting 125,000, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's going to give you 125,000. They'll say, okay, we're going to give you only 50,000 or maybe 75,000, right? So then you kind of go back and adjust those numbers on those spreadsheets, saying that, okay, my budget for sound, let's say my budget for maybe, storyboard artist is not 560. I can't really afford it, right? So I'll probably give lesser than that. It may not be that sophisticated because storyboard, you don't really need a very, like a pretty looking storyboard. It's, a lot of directors even go stick diagrams, right?
Stick figures, yes.
Yeah, so that you may not need that much. I mean, you can completely get rid of storyboard artists because as a director, you're basically saying, okay, I'm just going to do it myself, right? Likewise, you may have a lot of areas where you can adjust these prices. So good. I think it's a good thing to start with the peak value. The maximum budget.
Yeah, the worst case scenario, and then you break it down and see.
Because then when you get the real funding and they go, well, we're not going to give you this, we'll give you that. Then you can start going, okay, well, I did the highest end of this, so I can take it away and work that budget in instead of starting from the low end and trying to say, I definitely, absolutely need $50,000 to get this done. I've checked everything. This is how much I need. And then they go, well, we'll give you 25,000. And you're like, well, that's not going to work because I actually need 50,000.
Because most of the time you do ask for a bit higher than you actually need in case of emergencies, and they do negotiate and they will give you less. So it is good to always come in like that.
And sure, you never know. You might have a rich uncle who has generous heart, and he will say, okay, how much do you need? You will say, okay, show me what you got, right? He's going to say, show me what you got. And you're going to give him the budget. And he's pretty impressed. He'd say, okay, I'll give you 125,000.
Yeah, I got a rich uncle, but I've never asked for money from him. He's got a good heart, but owing him is like owing the devil.
Yeah, usually 125,000.
So it could go that way also. So if you start off with 50,000 and then you're cutting corners, right? You're going to give him 50,000. He's going to say, okay, I'll give you 50,000, right? But now, if you come up with a big number, then the person who's going to, who has a generous heart, he'll give it to you. So it's probably a good idea to go with a higher number first, and then come down from that point onwards.
Right.
So that's also pretty good, I think. Good job.
Yeah, one thing that was confusing even for me still is like the cost of pre-production stuff, rehearsal days for actors and things. Do they get paid the same rate they would for a on-production day?
Yes.
Same thing with pre-production people that are working on your set. Like they get paid their daily rate before it even starts, right?
Yeah. From day one, if you're doing rehearsal or regular production, it doesn't matter. For them, it's like their rate. I mean, it's negotiable, but generally, technically speaking, you're supposed to pay them what they're worth, not really what it is worth, what it is they're worth for you. right? You see my point? The production is probably more worth for you, but for them, it's like a basic workday.
Right.
They don't see the distinction between a rehearsal because they would probably be equally emotionally discharging for them, whether it's a rehearsal or a final production. They're not going to be holding up,
Yeah.
their stuff, right? Sometimes they may, they probably have the best performance for the production day, but they're still putting in their 10 hours or 15 hours, whatever.
Yeah, and also while I filled it in, we knew that like, oh, we'll probably wouldn't need this and we probably wouldn't need that. But just if we were to, how much would we have to pay them and all that kind of thing. So that was also good to
yeah, because like some of the things we added were like hotel lodgings for the 2 actors, and that was if we were bringing them out of somewhere else that's not close by. But if we were using local actors, then we can cut that out, cut down the per diem, and don't give them any dinner money because they're not coming out of state or out of country even.
Yeah, I feel like this really depends. Like if you have your company and like this is what you're doing all the time, right? This is going to be like a different ball game too, because you'll have your niche market too and your marketing too, versus like yeah. So it's interesting on this exercise.
Good. I have a different take on that, Lakota. I would never cut the dinner money. I would give them the dinner money, even if they don't deserve it.
Never cut food. Smart
man.
man.
I'm not talking about lunch. I'm talking about like after set's done.
No, yeah, he's
like,
talking about when they're
coming
off
out
the
of
clock.
If they're like not on set, they're getting their meal. You pay them a per diem for that meal if they're on your set for a long time, especially if they're coming out of state. Excuse me. But if they're like going back to their house, then it's less. You don't need it as much as you would if you were bringing people
catering is something else. While they're on set, is feeding them is something else. Catering is something else. We're talking about like after they're off the clock, when they're like on their own time, maybe a little extra money for dinner in case they get on. They leave set, for example, late and restaurants are closed. And they need to eat something real quick at a
not if restaurants are closed. You just give it out. I mean, the same thing happens in business. If anyone's ever been on a work trip, they give you some money for you to eat, even though you're not necessarily on the clock when you're eating after work.
That's called per diem. That's what they call it.
Really great.
Yeah, it's right here, per diem.
When I was doing the island shoot, we got it was awesome. We got lodging, we got per diems and everything, and it was phenomenal. It was a great experience. Yeah, and it was lots of like cool things like when you have like the budget to be doing these things. So you have like your company say it's worth 50 million, and you're like, okay, so we're shooting this, short 3 pages for 100 grand or 125 grand. That makes more sense. But yeah, then you wouldn't want to cut corners like food at that point. I mean, if you're doing like student stuff, then yeah, we're gonna be cutting a lot.
You never want to cut food. I don't think even if you're
no, you wouldn't cut food. You would pay for food.
But like per diem and stuff, that's different. That's a different thing.
But the per diem is something that's not necessarily obligatory because you're paying them for more often than not. You're paying their transportation more often than not. You're paying their food in the whole day throughout the whole work day. And sometimes
breakfast and lunch. Certain productions will have all three. Certain productions will just offer lunch. Certain productions will offer breakfast, lunch, but you pay for your own dinner after set's done.
And sometimes they're also paying. And sometimes they're also paying your lodging. So the extra pay for dinner and such, that's an extra cost. That it's more of a compliment. It's like an extra cost, not necessarily accommodation. Yeah, not necessarily necessary, but encouraged if you can.
Per diem, I think, is either or, right? If you are paying, if you give per diem, then you're basically saying this is a lump sum, and you figure it out what you want to do with it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah.
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 So you don't have to really, but sometimes it works out better because per diem is not your headache. I mean, I don't know the casting, how they
do
the actors, actors how they do it. But do they prefer per diem, or do they prefer everything taken care of for them? Because I think usually the actors have their managers, so the managers kind of prefer a certain way they want to take care of their actors, and they would probably prefer per diem. I don't know. I think I'm just kind of
I guess it's probably a
making
case
an
by case
assumption.
basis. To in all honesty,
Mm.
right?
Yeah,
Like
it's probably just
Because
individually based, like who likes what.
yeah, that's what I mean. That's
Some
what I mean.
actors will
Yeah.
probably
because
like just
more
to have not to have to choose and think about it themselves and just have food come to them. And other ones might want to have like just the money so they can decide what to spend it on and where to get it from and all that. But that is a
and
good
also
point. Per
more
diem could be
often,
for lunch, so that is a good point.
yeah, but also more often than not, you're going to be on a 12 to if you're on a 12 to 15-hour set, most of your meals are going to be covered.
If
That's
it's
just
union,
like,
you try to stay like 8 hours to 10, and then once it goes over,
yeah,
I think it's after 10 or is it after 12? It starts being double time. One of those two.
I think it's after 10.
I think yeah, 8 to 10 hours is time and a half, and then anything after 10 hours this is like double time. So you really want to try to
Yeah,
knock
but you
out.
also are required to feed them every 4 to 6 hours, if I'm not mistaken.
I
So
think on the union it's 8 hours minimum, maximum, and on top of that you can work up to 10 hours. So you pay overtime from 8 to 10 hours. The basic union rule is that you cannot have somebody approach the set 12 hours. So usually, like if they're going 10 hours from 8 o'clock to, let's say, what is that? 8 to 8 is 12, so 8 to 6. So the next day they have to get back around 8 o'clock. So that means they would require a 12 hours layover, right? Layoff. And that's a complete must. So that includes the travel time. So
Mhm.
you would have the person is a call, if he has a call time at 8 o'clock, and he's starting from his house at 6 o'clock.
Mhm.
So basically 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock is his duration. So that is included in your 10-hour period. So that means if he's going home at 8 o'clock, then he's coming back at 6 o'clock. That would be not really satisfying the 12-hour rule. So that would be that would not be allowed.
Yeah, you would
Right.
have to do like there's like sleeping penalties and all those kinds of things on like the big shows and stuff. Well, because again, like you have to at that point once you are dealing with things that like
Union.
scale.
Right.
Yeah,
And that's why union is like a lot more expensive because you have all those rules. And if you have to go against them, then you end up paying a lot more, or you have to add an extra production day. So it's
Yeah.
like a lot more expensive if things are running behind than on a
You have
non-union
to make sure
project
everything.
where you have a bit more leeway.
Yeah, once you hit union, everything's got to be a really, really tight ship. That's why it's like good to start off with student, then like micro budget, and then kind of move into like non-union stuff is a great. And because like once you get into like the different unions and stuff, it's everything is like done a certain way, and it's very.
And they have a certain rate that they get and all that.
Yeah, and
like
like you
the
can't
budget.
at that point you can't screw anything up. Like you got to make sure that like everything you're doing is like it's tight.
Yeah.
How much do you have for the 80?
The assistant director, where is that?
I know. I just like it's a weird thing. I like to know like
So many.
occasionally I look it up, keeps the numbers in my mind,
Because
reminds me. Well, it's all
that's the
different.
guy, that's the person who's going to take care of all that scheduling. Make sure that the production starts on time and then ends on time, and then the actors are getting enough sleep.
Still, I
and
put him at
whatnot.
$250 a day. I think it's a little bit more than that, but
I did not put anything. I told you those were the Richmond rates.
How could you work without an assistant director, Priscilla?
I said
no, we have
I
an
was
assistant director right here. We just have him at $250 a day.
I
okay.
told you that I thought those rates were low, but that was from ZipRecruiter. That was from the job listings I found with people's showing rates. That was from Staff Me Up. It was multiple websites showing
Hmm.
that was the average, not the high end, but like the averaging rates in the Richmond area. So it could just be because we don't have much film around here that it's a lower rate as opposed to a bigger city. Like I'm sure DC has a higher, like I know DC has a higher film scene, so they might charge more, for example, as
Yeah.
opposed to the city near here.
Yeah, like 80, depending on like the budget size too, like that might be more accurate for say like indie stuff.
Especially because
Not
most
union,
of
though, yeah.
most of the
No,
AD's job is done by either in a lot of the indie scene, it's done by either the line producer or the production manager or like little bits here and there.
Well, you had 300 a day for
because they're trying to cut corners. So I feel like that because we live in such a not film centered city or state, that probably affects their pay as well.
I think the first assistant director, that should be just the assistant director.
Well, because you have the
AD
first AD, the second AD, second.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
like
you'd
the
have
first
the
AD is probably closer to like it's a lot of
80.
it's gonna be a lot higher than that. No, like a third AD is like a bit above like PA. It's PA is like
Yeah,
three-
like I
third
mentioned,
AD is
guys,
gonna
these
be,
are
like,
all around our area. So
Yeah.
of course it's
I
going
mean,
to be
some of them
different
were around the
than
area, so we just put in a number. Most of them we looked up and we found the numbers around our area. Some were like, I don't know how much this would cost and we can't find it, so we just put in something.
Yeah, Vancouver.
Right. No, what I was saying was that see the first AD is basically below the AD. You know what I mean? So nobody calls the AD a first AD. It's basically AD, assistant director, and
Mhm.
then you have the first assistant director and the second assistant director. So this rate may be for the first AD, but actually the rate for the AD might be much higher than this. That's what I
that
was
might
trying
be that actually might be something I think I might have put first AD and maybe that showed up. So that
Was
could be it
this
too.
Was this
That
from
could be it too.
the template or was it something that you put in?
It was from the
No,
template already.
Oh, okay, I see. That's interesting because I would have expected this to be assistant director and then the first assistant director and the second is assistant director.
Are you sure?
Yeah, and we got-
I've never heard of like the first assistant director being in there if you also have an assistant director, because otherwise
Exactly.
it might be confusing.
Yeah, normally it's just like the assistant director and then the second assistant director.
Right.
We can get the book later and check because we have a book of terms and stuff and names and
Job
positions.
functions and all that.
Yeah,
I
job
think
functions and
it
stuff.
might be used interchangeably, but I'm not completely 100%. You might be right. They might be a different
Yeah.
role.
But that was what I had trouble with a lot was because we live in a not very film centered state. So some of the rates for me were surprisingly low. And then others were like, oh yeah, that's an average. That's average for high end indie. And then others were just like, oh, really? That's it. So it was pretty surprising, some of them.
Yeah, so some of this is
Well-
more like on the lower and indie side, and some it's on like the average or the higher end. Just depends
Yeah.
on what we could find. But again, in reality, if we were going to make this, we would be calling different people, seeing like different, contacting different people around our area to actually see what their rate would be for our specific project. Because some people charge more or less depending on what it entails and how long
Yeah.
it is. And if it's
Another
a long
thing that
form
I
project,
also-
then they might get a weekly rate and they might reduce it and not have to do their daily rate, which is being more expensive if you added it up per week, and instead take a lesser weekly rate because they're going to be on the project a little bit longer. Or they might try to make it charge more because they're going to be having to be on your set longer, and so they can't take other jobs. It just depends on the individual and on the agreements. And there's also those union rates, which are very required if you have union.
Yeah, the indie scene, it's a lot more varied, which makes it a little bit harder. But another thing that I learned very much from this experience, I learned a lot from this experience, is just how much goes into preparing these budgets, because you also have to think of post-production and pre-production, and figuring that out is hard if you don't have a specific, especially I was going off our last project for reference, but it might not be completely accurate because our last project has some different things. So it takes a lot of, you have to contact a lot of people. Like if I were to make this again, I would definitely start earlier, and I would contact a lot of people and ask their rates and try to calculate more individually for that particular project, and give them the average and be like, this is a project, how much do you think it would be post-production, pre-production, how much work do you think it would take, because they would know better than me. And so I could make an estimate a lot better. But it also made me understand why people go to school for this, why there are professionals that do this, because it is a lot. It can be a bit confusing at times, and you have to calculate for a lot of little things, and it's very easy for things to slip through the cracks, or to overlook one thing, or to think that one thing probably will cost less than it does or more than it does, and then be surprised.
Oh, for
See,
like
also
budgeting and stuff. Yeah, accounting
Yeah.
and budgeting and stuff is its own accounting is like that's a whole like big
That's a whole other job function.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, the other thing
Being
is,
able to do
that your budget is like 125,000, right? So this is for what, 3-page, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
So 3-page meaning 33,000 per page. So that's how they would look at it, right? So if your count is 1,000 per page, that would be like so that's how I would think we need to compare it. Where do you stand with respect to per page
Right.
basis?
No, yeah, but like I said, it's different when you're like, oh, it's probably going to cost this. This is way more specific. So it would actually require me to do a lot more research and talk to a lot more people and be a lot more specific in my research, as opposed to just looking up online and seeing the averages and stuff like that. So that's why it's so uneven, because there is so much different information everywhere and so many varying rates, especially in the area we live in. So yeah, in the future, I'd start earlier. I would be a lot more specific. I would talk to a lot more people, because there are a lot of variations, as opposed to just, oh, it's probably going to be this much, delegate this much per page, and then figure it out as we go. But still trying to average for the worst case scenario. Like if I were doing this for the project right now, it would be way, way less than this. Even if I was doing it for a higher end in my mind for actual funding, I would not look for the highest of the highest. I would probably call people and average out and contact and be a lot more thorough than I was. And that was something that I regretted. I wish I would have been.
Why would you do that when you want to get the higher end so that you can?
No, you know what I mean. Damn it! I'm saying that I would be more. Sorry.
Doing it for.
I mean that I would be more thorough in like talking to people instead of looking up the higher end online, and that kind of thing. I would actually talk to people and see. Sorry, I'm not wording it right.
All right. Anyway, this thing I sent out to everybody, I also included like these tabs just to show like what I understood from each thing and what you input here, what you input there. So if you guys don't understand anything and you want to try this out and you want to budget, maybe even use it for your real project, then that might help you some for the stuff that I understood and knew what it was. I added a bunch of comments and stuff all over the page.
Be interesting to budget for say like a 25-page script or something. Like something like for me, because when I see a 3-page short, I'm picturing like no budget to like micro budget. Like once you start getting to like 20,
but some really do have a budget though. Like I know fan made films, on YouTube. I know there's at least like some Star Wars one. They paid $110,000 to do like a 6-minute thing. So I mean, it really just depends.
And it wasn't even that many special effects
on what it is and what you're budgeting for. Like usually you're probably not going to get that, especially on the indie scene. But it really depends on what you're making and if people are willing to give money for it.
Yeah, and most indie short films cost more than you would expect too, which is surprising. Like ours was like no budget, and we still ended up like almost $3,000. So.
Right.
Yeah, it's good. Like when you're growing business and stuff too, and it makes sense. Like you're not gonna be doing budgeting stuff on like $50 million your first thing unless it's like you were blind.
And we had like a skeleton script, a skeleton crew. We brought a lot of our own gear. We figured out a free location. We did everything ourselves, and it still cost more than we were
So
expecting.
V's total with her budget, she came to $37,000. So that's like in between. So see, I think it's actually good that Sarah, you did like the super micro budget.
Yeah.
We did the higher end sort of like there's you can obviously go higher end than we did, but we did like somewhere in the middle of high end and middle. And then
Mine was like
V's is a little bit more in like the lower middle.
Yeah. Mine was like when you give like an honorarium kind of payment. Like it's like
I do really like that we all did it in different ways so that we can see like different perspectives of breaking it down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's truly it's
so I'm curious.
One last thing I want to show
V,
everyone with this.
Can I
if
just
you guys
ask
are
one question?
No. One last thing I want to show everyone with this, if you guys are doing it, is shipping and postage. Let's say, well, actually, let me go to something else. Let's say we have another lead cast. So the way you want to get your totals so that everything makes sense in this budget template thing, if you guys are downloading a template, you want to make sure that the formulas are working, but you don't want to, I saw in V's and Sarah, you guys were typing in the stuff into these boxes, which actually changes the sum. So what you really want to do is you want to say lead cast is going to be one of them, and we're paying them by the day or by the week or whatever. And how many days are we paying them? Maybe they're working for 24 days and their rate, how much do they get per day? Let's say $200. And then it automatically generates into that. And there's 4,800 and it adds it to this box, which then goes into the top sheet box for the grand total of everything. Or actually it goes into a cast box, which then goes into the grand total of the above the line stuff. So that's how you want to do it, because then the formulas are still working. And then if you want to adjust it, that way, if someone's asking, if you're doing a budget and someone's saying, well, why is it the casting director 560? You go, well, we're going to get one of them for a day rate of $280 for 2 days. And that's why. And they're okay. Instead of just having it save $560 for them,
Yeah,
so that's just something you want to keep an eye on if you're ever doing budget stuff.
No, that makes
sense. So the question I have for V is, what was your process V like? How did you do it?
She had to leave.
Oh, dang it! I needed to ask her. I'll ask her next week then, because I was really curious to know if she went the same route I did, or if she looked up any other websites that I can find, or if she called people. Like, what was her process of doing it? And then the other question was I wanted to know for Brian is the rates around your area for the top, let's say the above the line, just out of curiosity, in the DC area, in the indie scene that you've seen, because you said you've seen more middle and lower end as well. So I was just curious as to an average where you live to compare to the Richmond area that I was looking at.
Yeah.
An average total as an average the whole film, or
both, I guess. What would a film average be, and then the main, what would you pay a director, a sound guy, and an actor? Those three main ones for me.
It all varies because, like you said, this area is the nation's capital, so that everybody's expecting you to have money some kind of way. But I've had a makeup artist. She was gonna charge me $400 a day.
What?
Yeah, and I was like,
for 10 hours, that's 40. That's not that bad, depending on what it is.
The thing is, I only work. I don't work 10 to 12. So I only work the 8-hour days. The thing that I had to let her go was because it wasn't that I needed that. I mean, if she wanted like special effects and like aliens and all that stuff, I would totally understand. But for what I was asking for, I just needed like, you know, a cut, some scars, and maybe a couple black eyes. That's all I really wanted. And she was still gonna charge me for that. And I was just like, well, I'm just gonna have to let you go because
yeah, that sounds like higher end, because for us, like, we were looking at like blood and stuff like that. And yeah, we were looking at 30 to 40 an hour.
I really didn't give her a reason why, but the reason why was because she's pretty much making more than a cinematographer. And I hate to like put one job over the other, but
Unless you're doing major special effects where you have to have synthetics and a whole bunch of like crazy stuff, then I agree with you.
Yeah, I feel like makeup is a lot harder than people give it credit for. So I do understand to an extent. But yeah, I feel like if it's just,
I mean, so is everything else. Cinematography is harder than you'd think.
No, yeah,
nail the
and
shot.
plus I give myself a black eye all the time with makeup by accident. So
well, that's, like I said, like if that was the case, like I would, like I mentioned, I would totally understand. But that wasn't this. That's what.
And it was an indie. It was a shorter film as well, I'd imagine. It's not like a big production.
It was a shorter film, and then on top of that, like no offense to anybody that if anybody listening that is in makeup, but every time I go on set and there's a makeup artist, usually the makeup artist shows up, pats a couple cheeks, and then leaves. So it's just like, I'm not gonna pay you to show up and then come put a prosthetic, you know, because you know a lot of the makeup artists I've dealt with, like I don't know why. I question. I'm like, why are you even here? Like, why are you in this industry? Like, if you just show up, you know, because what I expect from a makeup artist as somebody who's making films is that person is there on set with you throughout the entire time. So she's touched up. If she has to touch
they're
up,
on standby for touch-ups.
Yeah.
She's on touch up if something happens, you know. But I've been on a lot of sets where the makeup artist shows up. They'll put like the scar on there, and they're like, "Okay, honey, don't touch it," and they'll leave. And I'm like, "Where's she going?"
So you said you worked in New York as well. So New York compared to DC, would you say there's like a huge difference?
Yes.
Or is it still kind of a little bit?
I already said yes.
Okay, it cut off. Sorry, I just now heard it.
Yeah, New York is about money. That's all it is. Like you.
Okay, so it's still not as bad as New York. That makes me feel a little better.
Not as bad as New York, because like as you had mentioned, there's not that much here, but you still have a lot of people that are trying to make like a living out of it, and I'm talking like a six-figure living. They're not trying to make it like, you know what I'm saying, like a decent living, like an honest living. You got people that are trying to make like 6 figures out of doing sound work. Like I mentioned one time before, like I had the sound lady I was trying to get for my film. She wanted like $600 a day, and I was like, I don't even make $600 a day, and I'm in the military.
It depends. Like for union stuff, like it's not that unusual, like to make 6 figures. I mean, depending on like if you're high end at your job, it's like the way I view it is this: you're not going to be making that in any department when you start. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and he's talking about the indie scene too.
Yeah,
so
that's where you
other
start.
argument.
Once you get union and stuff, it changes the game, but you have to be able to get there, right? So you have to be able to like know what gear to buy, know all of the stuff, like the amount of stuff that you might be making 6 figures at sound, you know, by the time you get up to on those high end tiers, you probably own most of your, like a decent amount of your gear, you know, pretty much everything there is about sound. And you're like one of the lead sound guys, you know what I mean?
But,
right.
but okay, yeah, I was just
and like on
curious
the indie scene, that they're still trying to charge that much, it's just ridiculous because they're not very professional. They didn't put in as much time. They don't have as much experience, but they still try to get the same rate.
And that can be a frustration. But yeah, I just thought I'd ask because I know that the scene in DC is bigger, even though it's still small compared to other cities. But yeah, I just wanted to see, like, because some of the rates were really small, and I was like, that's like $40,000 a year type. And then others were like hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and I was like,
Here's the thing about DC. You mentioned that it's a bigger scene. It's really not. It seems that way because it's the nation's capital. That's
A
it.
bigger scene than Richmond. That's
It's slightly bigger. I'd say Baltimore has more action than DC, in my opinion. Like
I got tons of action. I'm Vancouver.
It's more film friendly down in Baltimore actually than it is in DC. It's just DC is the nation's capital, and but
They think because people live there, they have more money and know the rate, so the rates are higher. Gotcha.
I think it's because it's the nation's capital that they're gonna get, nation's capital dollar.
Gotcha. Okay, I was just curious. That's all. But yeah, it was something that was a little frustrating. Like, and me and Coda were even debating it. Like, at the end of the day, it is hard to find that balance at what is a fair rate to charge, especially because one of the things that makes it so hard for people to make it into the business is because so many people charge so much and the rates are so high, and then it kind of makes it harder for up and coming people to get a foothold.
Well,
in a way.
If I'm stepping down into like indie world doing whatever, I'm not charging, like, it's not the same amount of money that I'm making if I'm working on union.
No, yeah, but if you want someone who does their work well in like a medium price, it's still a lot. And so it can be hard. It can be a little hard to get a foot in the door.
No matter where you're working, like what, just for me, if the budget doesn't change, it shouldn't change like the way you work. Okay, unless there's no budget, then it changes the way you work because you can't afford anything. So you don't, you know what I mean? Like at that point, like whatever you're doing is just like, not changes things if you have no budget for equipment.
Yeah.
Like,
what were you saying, Brian? Sorry, I cut you off.
I think, my opinion, bring your expertise no matter the size.
Yeah. Sorry, Brian. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, trying to determine what to charge people. A lot of people try to be humble and they'll be like, oh, I charge what I'm worth. I mean, that's a good thing to think about as well. But if you're concerned about like what to charge people, I'd say a good rule of thumb would just be like to charge people like what it is that you currently make. So like if you are, whatever you and Lakota do and you guys work and you guys are making it work, charge that. Like how much you would be, how much, because you got to look at it like this. The big question is, well, how many days are we shooting? So if you're going to ask me to take a whole 5 days, I might need to use leave. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So to look at it like if somebody wants me to use, take off work, well, I'm going to charge them what I would make at my normal 9 to 5.
Right.
And then
that makes
the cool thing about
the more experience you get, you can maybe charge a little bit more and then go from
me,
there.
I really don't mind that because like I said, I'm in the military. So if I have to use leave, I'm still getting paid. Like this for me, I'm like double dipping. So like you're gonna pay me what I would pay on a week. And
Man, if your bosses hear this, they're like, oh, so you don't need it.
Oh, that's the way of life in the military. Double dipping. Oh God, yes. I'm not. There's no secret.
Oh, okay, that is fine. Then you're good.
That's the government way of life. Everybody in the government. If you'd be
yeah.
Say it in the
not just military.
Like,
it's also just any government job, really.
You'd be surprised. But,
no wonder Mary Kay is so popular.
If you have a question of where our military, where our tax dollars go, like you have people making money doing absolutely nothing.
Well, let's not go there because it might get into a whole other debate. But
before we get into that, let me end this tonight then.
Yeah.
So what we're studying next is lighting equipment. We're going to go over some of the stuff we've already gone over, but we're going to look into it a little more deeply, like lumen, CRI, and like what to look for whenever you are looking into some of that stuff, as well as light meters, because we didn't really go over that, and what to look for if you're going to buy one of those.
Awesome.
And some of the brands you might find for these drones, what to look for when you're buying a drone, and some of the other stuff, like which ones you can get without a license and which ones need a license, all of that, and what the brands are for that. Exporting and compression. We've already gone over this somewhat, but I'm sure there's plenty more to go over with what happens when it's getting compressed. We're going to go over variable bit rate and constant bit rate and those other types of things that will explain better what is happening whenever you are exporting your footage. And then Netflix and Amazon, if there's any I want to find out like what they require in their stuff. So I was putting this into the syllabus to see if we can check it out and see what they require, what kind of cameras and
As
what
far
kind of
as like, oh yeah.
other rules they require whenever you're trying to get anything on their platforms. And the last thing I wanted to say is next Monday we are going to be watching Inception, because our next editing exercise is going to be for parallel editing or cross-cutting, one or the other. And so that movie does it really well. And so that will be our next movie to watch Monday. So we won't be studying anything on Monday. We'll be watching a movie.
Woohoo!
That is everything. I'm going to stop the recording there.
Yeah.